Hey guys, tonight we're not boarding a ship, we're not chasing pirates, and we're not dealing with any soggy wooden planks that smell like despair and wet rope. Instead, we're wandering into a different kind of wild, exhausting, survival-based lifestyle, the world of real American cowboys. Not the Hollywood kind with perfect hats, rehearsed smirks, and dramatic sunset lighting. Not the ride into town, drink whiskey, and somehow never get dusty kind. I mean the actual cowboys, sunburnt, overworked, permanently sore people who spend more time on horseback than you've spent sitting through ads on YouTube. But before we ride out, go ahead and like the video, and subscribe only if this kind of quiet, weird, mildly educational storytelling actually helps you relax. If not, that's fine. Even cowboys didn't win over everyone. Some folks just preferred staying home and not getting kicked by unpredictable animals. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. It's always 2 a.m. somewhere, and if you're here, you're probably trying to fall asleep to the gentle, comforting thought that at least you don't have to wrangle longhorn cattle across 20 miles of thorny brush tomorrow. Now dim the lights. Switch on a fan for that soft white noise. Get comfortable. And maybe tuck your feet under a blanket, not because of rats this time, but because an imaginary rattlesnake might be slithering around, warming itself near your charger cable. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what cowboy life actually felt like? Beyond the movie tropes and dramatic guitar music, what it was like to wake up on the cold, hard ground with a back that sounds like a bag of gravel being shaken, and a day ahead that involves 14 straight hours in a saddle that was definitely not designed by anyone who cared about comfort. What did their mornings smell like? Spoiler, dust, smoke, horse, and yesterday's coffee. What did their evenings feel like after miles of herding cattle, who absolutely did not care about the cowboy's personal schedule, feelings, or sanity? And how did these tired, overworked riders face heat, storms, danger, monotony, and the unique joy of dealing with animals large enough to crush them just to keep America's cattle industry moving? Tonight, we're going to drift gently into that world, not to glamorize it, not to dramatize it, but to experience it softly, quietly, from the warm comfort of your bed, where no horse is going to step on you, and no boss is shouting, "Get moving, daylight's burning." So, take a slow breath in, let the modern world fall away, and imagine the wide open plains, the early dawn, the smell of campfire coffee, and a tired cowboy climbing into the saddle long before you would ever consider being awake. This is what it was like to live the cowboy's day, the work, the dust, the humor, the hardship, and the surprising peace found out on the open range. Settle in, close your eyes if you haven't already, and let the story begin. Chapter 1, Dawn, on the Texas Plains. And now, as we leave behind the echo of medieval bells and royal chaos, let your breath slow and settle into the wide, endless quiet of the American West. Because before the myth, before the movies, before the cowboys became legends on posters and silver screens, they were just tired men waking up on cold ground with sore backs, stiff joints, and a whole day of hard work ahead. Picture this: a pale dawn spreading across the Texas plains. The kind of dawn that doesn't announce itself with music or birdsong, just a slow unfurling of light, a hint of gold on the edge of the horizon, and the faint chill that seeps through wool and bone alike. On that hard-packed earth, a cowboy stirs. He's wrapped in a wool blanket that's more scratch than softness, and under him lies a simple bedroll, a bit of canvas, a bit of hope, and not a single pillow in sight. His back aches, not a little, not metaphorically, but in that deep, stubborn way that comes from weeks of riding, roping, sleeping outside, and trying not to think too hard about what day it actually is. He sits up slowly, boots still dusty from yesterday, hat tipped low over eyes that haven't had enough rest in, well, forever. The world is quiet, except for the wind, that soft, endless wind that never really stops moving across the plains. The air is crisp, clean, almost sharp enough to wake a man without coffee, almost. Somewhere nearby, a horse snorts that low, breathy sound that says, "Yes, I'm awake too." And no, I don't feel like doing this either. The cowboy grins faintly at that, because it's the closest thing to conversation he'll get before sunrise. He reaches for the coffee pot hanging over last night's fire, the coals still faintly glowing, the metal cool enough to touch. He pours himself a cup of what can only be described as a bold mixture of caffeine, smoke, and regret. He sips it anyway, Because out here, on the open range, comfort isn't a luxury, it's a memory. The sun finally crests the horizon, spilling light across the vast, flat earth. The world comes alive in quiet motion, horses shifting, men muttering, a few silhouettes stretching against the light like shadows waking from sleep. The cowboy stands, rolling his shoulders, stretching muscles that have long since stopped complaining out loud. He checks his gear, saddle, rope, canteen, rifle, each piece worn, mended, and worn again. Everything he owns fits in a circle around him. Everything he needs, he carries. This is not the cowboy of storybooks or old movies, not a gunslinger, not a drifter with poetic timing. This is a working man. A rider, a herder, a quiet presence beneath a sky so big it feels alive. And before the day truly begins, before the long hours in the saddle, before the heat and the dust and the thousand small irritations of ranch life, he takes one last deep breath. For a moment, it's just him and the dawn, the hum of the wind, the scent of sage and smoke, the simple, stubborn peace of being where he belongs on the edge of everything, between exhaustion and freedom. He finishes his coffee, adjusts his hat, and with the calm, unhurried patience of a man who has nowhere else to be but everywhere at once, he walks toward his horse. The day hasn't even begun, and already the sun feels heavier than it should. But that's the cowboy's world, a life of motion, of miles measured not in comfort, but in endurance. And as he swings into the saddle, silhouette framed by the brightening sky, the world stretches ahead, vast, empty, waiting. Just another day, just another dawn, just another man and his horse against forever. Chapter 2. The Calloused Chronicles of Cowboy Life. So let's talk about hands for a moment. Your hands, if we're being honest, are the telltale signs of a life well lived, or perhaps a life of bewildering choices. Now, imagine you're soaring through the 1,870 seconds deep into the cattle drive era, and you wake up with a jolt, your palm landing on a rough saddle horn like shaking hands with a particularly aggressive cactus. That's right, 14 hours in the saddle was merely the beginning of your day. It's not just a cowboy thing, it's an endurance sport. Your hand is a testament to your bravery, or perhaps just your bad life choices in the name of rodeo glory. It's cracked and calloused, boasting rope burns lovingly crafted from countless hours of securing Texas longhorns, which, let's be honest, look a lot more like antiquated pianos with legs than livestock. If only life had a manual, right? How to Rodeo Like a Champion could easily be a bestseller, but no one would buy it, mostly because you'd still have to read it in the half-light of dawn, covered in cow manure. Ah, the joys of cowboying. The morning sun didn't just rise, it blitzed on the horizon like it was about to audition for a role in the most annoying alarm clock in the world. One moment, you're dreaming sweet nothings, and the next, you're dodging blinding rays like they're angry hornets. And speaking of angry hornets, let's not forget your actual day's work. After pulling yourself up, and let's not kid around, the only thing holding you together was sheer will, you're immediately greeted by the unmistakable aroma of your fellow cowpokes. Imagine a solid blend of sweat, hay, and, let's call it what it is, too many beans from last night's supper. Forget artisanal coffee. This is the true breakfast of champions. Just the scent alone could wake up a bison from hibernation, and yet you'll take a big whiff like it's fresh-baked cinnamon rolls. Why? Because you're a cowboy and that's how you roll. No time for a smoothie or a quick latte. The cattle aren't going to herd themselves, unless they were to suddenly come down with a case of the nope. Breakfast is served cold on account of the stampeding cows, and is basically whatever you manage to snag from your saddlebag. Lucky you, it could be stale biscuits, hardtack, or if you're really feeling adventurous, leftover jerky that might qualify as a rock in a previous life. Nothing like a feast fit for a king to start your day of rough and rugged adventure. After you manage to wrestle down whatever brunch abomination you've assembled, it's time to mount up. Imagine trying to exert effort while straddling a horse that's significantly less inclined to cooperate than your ex-spouse when it comes to sharing the remote. Once you're lumbered onto that saddle, you'll pretend you're a cowboy superhero, except instead of saving the world, you're just trying to keep your hat on while navigating a stampede. Did I mention the saddle? The leather is about as soft as a brick, extra sauced with regret, and the hay underneath does little to erase the sensation that your horse is basically a giant pogo stick with a behavioral problem. And just when you think it can't get worse, You find yourself gripping that rough saddle horn like it's the only thing keeping your dignity from transforming into a cloud of dust behind you. Now, you might wonder what happens after the sun has fully risen, and you've escorted a herd of longhorns a mile or two northward. Well, hold on to your hat, partner. A cowboy's day isn't merely about tending to a bunch of bewildered cows. You're really just an unpaid traffic cop with a fancy hat. Half of your job involves shouting creative and colorful combinations of expletives at the cattle while attempting to guide your motley crew toward the nearest railhead in Kansas. There's a joke that goes, "Why did this cattle break into a trot?" Answer: because you accidentally dropped the only sandwich in existence. If they'd only pulled themselves together, maybe you wouldn't need that entire first aid kit for your sanity. Picture it: a cacophony of mooing, clopping hooves, the sun frying your brain like an egg on a sidewalk, while you lament your life choices to no one in particular. It's a spectacle that assures everyone watching that you're one wild steer away from becoming a permanent part of historical reenactment lore. Remember those early morning ambitions? Somewhere along the line, you've traded in pipe dreams of luxurious city living for the enchanting aroma of cow dung and the promise of the great outdoors. The quiet, idyllic life you pictured in those teenage years has undoubtedly gone out the window faster than a cow at a rodeo, and yet here you are, gloriously unrepentant. Irony is the cowboy's closest companion. You tackle the day with gritty enthusiasm, your hands trembling from handling the ropes, while nursing blisters that might someday qualify for a Medal of Valor. You search for solace in the beauty of sunsets, perhaps imagining someday you might retire from your life as a plains-dwelling gladiator to hold court at the local watering hole, regaling tales of the great cattle adventure. Spoiler alert, it'll always end with you losing your cowpoke hat in a game of poker against the horses outside. And that's the life of a cowboy for you: endless labor, beautiful sunsets, and really questionable breakfast options. But as the stars come out at night, twinkling like judgmental eyes, you might just find yourself smiling. After all, living a life where every week is an unexpected wrestling match with a wayward steer can't be that bad, can it? How about we invest in a second helping of hardtack instead? Ah, the glamour of the Wild West. You can't make this up. Chapter 3. The Saddle Sagas of 1870 Seconds, Cowboys. Hey guys, welcome back to our cozy corner of history, where we're about to dive into something sassier than a saloon brawl, and as warm as Grandma's quilt. Yes, you guessed it, we're wrangling with the life of a cowboy in the cattle drive era. Tonight, we'll unravel the mystery of why those cowpokes were spending so long in the saddle, longer than your last Zoom meeting, I promise. Now, before we trot off into tales of brushy trails and wayward steers, go ahead and give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and, drop a comment if you actually like what you see. Or don't, your choice. But, fair warning, if you find yourself laughing in your sleep, well, you're welcome. So, as you snuggle in, dim the lights, put on a fan to cool off those wild dreams, and get comfortable, let me ask you, ever felt like your morning commute was a tad too long? Or was your boss just a persistent herd of angry cattle? Ever wondered if you might feel more human if you stirred your coffee with a branding iron? No? Just me? Well then, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1870 Seconds, Texas, where your only alarm clock is an angry rooster, and your new best friend is a saddle that creaks like your knees on a Monday morning. Here you find yourself greeted by an enormous, cloudless sky, vibrant with shades of blue that even painters of the day would struggle to capture. As you stretch, muscles protest like a chorus of cranky cats, reminding you it's been 14 hours since your last moment of comfort, and that moment was, let's face it, just a brief squish on the saddle before it got uncomfortable again. Let's talk about that saddle for a moment. The leather is about as accommodating as a porcupine in a balloon factory. Each creak of the saddle beneath you is practically an audio reminder of every regrettable choice you've made up until this point. Hey there, remember when you thought living off beans with a side of dust was a great life choice? Oh, the nostalgia. After your morning stretch, which doubles as a physical therapy session for your back, you manage to drop down onto the ground, dusting off your jeans. The earth beneath you feels like it's plotting a resurgence. It's hard-packed, sun-baked ground, the kind that seems to say, that's right, you're in cowboy country now. Don't think about getting too comfortable. What's that lovely aroma? Is it? Why, yes. It's the delightful scent of human perseverance, mixed with a generous dose of sweat, and perhaps the lingering effects of last night's bean supper. A beautiful thing, really. almost has you nostalgic for all those cuisine-creating challenges you've let slip by in your modern kitchen. Now, breakfast is a stunning event. Yeah, let's call it that. Picture a meal served with less finesse than a rickety wheelbarrow at a horse race. You might find some hardtack definitely as hard as your aunt's famous fruitcake, and perhaps some jerky that's technically still edible, if you don't mind swallowing like a desert lizard. Crunchy. Outdoor dining brings its own set of challenges. You immediately eye the horizon, hoping to avoid the stampeding longhorns that seem to have developed a taste for chaos. They don't know it, but they make your soggy biscuit look good. As you chew, you're struck by an important question. Is slow chewing better than the possibility of dodging a cow? Now, once you've wrestled the remnants of breakfast down, it's time to mount up. Easier said than done. Picture yourself balancing on a horse that seems better suited for a Picasso painting than actual riding. You hoist yourself up, only to be greeted by your horse's refusal to conform to any notions of cooperation, a steed with a will of its own resembling your rebellious teenage years. As you settle into the saddle, it feels like you're preparing not just for a cattle drive, but also a long-term commitment to a lengthy relationship powered by grit and, possibly, the faint promise of happiness, if only you can wrangle those longhorns like a true cowboy. There's a beauty in the chaos, though. Picture this. You're at the helm of a wild stampede, shouting motivational mantras mixed with some creative swearing that would make a sailor blush. The cows are a formidable force, pawing the ground and mooing like they're sending out some sort of enraged let's go rallying cry. And just like that, your day morphs into a ballet of chaos and strategy, where every move feels like a personal insult, and every turn feels like a gamble against fate itself. What's the punchline to this rodeo of life? Well, you realize you're neither a human nor a cow. You're merely a traffic authority with a fancy hat that somehow encourages chaos, and you can't make this up. So, as you gallop through the hazy plains full of laborious rewards and evening sunsets reminiscent of outdated paint swatches, remember, every stomp of a hoof against that dusty trail is a reminder that this cowboy life is your reality, and it's worth every fight against the odds of a stampede and your breakfast choices, too. Chapter 4, Cookies Coffee Chronicles. Hey guys, welcome back to our comforting quilt of history, where tonight we're brewing a strong cup of cowboy life with a side of chuckwagon chaos. Yes, my fellow time travelers, we're diving into the world of Cookie the camp cook serving up more than just meals. He's dishing out a slapstick comedy show every morning, while stoking the fire beneath the ever-reliable chuckwagon. So grab your favorite blanket, dim the lights, and let's wander into a steaming kettle of absurdity that is the life of a cowboy cook in the 1,870 seconds. Imagine waking up to a morning aroma more intoxicating than a Sunday brunch buffet, yet filled with as much risk as a blindfolded dance at a square dance. Ever used a cooking pot that could also double as a canoe? Or wondered why coffee brewed directly over a campfire feels like a hug from a scolding dragon? And eggs? Let's not even get started. Maybe there's a universe where breakfast comes from the fridge. But in this one, it's a nail-biting game of will it crack, or will it just turn into a projectile? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1,870 seconds, Texas, where your morning alarm is the mildly befuddled crow of a rooster who clearly forgot his morning pep talk. Here's what's brewing. It's dawn, and Cookie, a grizzled fella, is standing by the chuckwagon, looking as sullen as a potato, because it's his life goal to ensure that you don't start the day feeling good about yourself. As you step outside, the air is crisp, so crisp, it feels like what you imagine. Penguins prancing in a snowstorm must feel like, only with fewer tuxedos and more mustaches. The sun peeks up over the horizon like a shy child, revealing a vast, unending sky, which in Texas is as blue and wild as your Aunt Betty after 3 cups of coffee. Now, while you're adrift in this bucolic beauty, Cookie is busy. Picture him, his sun-kissed skin wrinkled like a well-loved map, using elbow grease with all the finesse of a grizzly trying to conduct an orchestra. His back-to-back breakfast heroics can only be described as poetic chaos. You can hear the distinct sound of sizzling hardtack that could probably double as a hockey puck, and let's not even talk about the beans, the ancient, unyielding beans, which have seen more cattle drives than the cows themselves. Ah, the smell of coffee. It wafts through the air, more powerful than a stampede of longhorns. Cookie stirs his trusty pot over the fire like it's a secret potion, each swirl drumming up a humidity spectacle that would make even the biggest fans of natural mists shudder. You've never known joy until you've tasted coffee made from beans that might as well have been harvested during the Revolutionary War. But wait, the excitement isn't over yet. As Cookie shouts some enthusiastic nonsense about broods stronger than a longhorn's rear leg, you can't help but appreciate his commitment to serving a breakfast that could only be described as a strategic survival test. He plops down a plate of burnt offering bacon that could double as a defense weapon against any morning grumpiness and grits that have attained a texture reminiscent of a very sticky dream you wish you never had. And, as you sit down to engage in this culinary contest, you suddenly realize you're seated next to a couple of cowpokes who haven't exactly mastered the art of breakfast etiquette, or any form of etiquette, really. They're tossing greasy morsels to one another between hearty laughs, while one of them brandishes a piece of hardtack like a throwing star, almost hitting Cookie, who has just bestowed a look that could curdle milk. And then, if you can believe it, Cookie catches your eye and shares a wink as if to say, "You can't make this up." As the sun climbs higher, you ponder, what would the modern equivalent be? Well, let's just say, if you've ever tried to brew coffee in your dorm room with nothing but a microwave and a questionable sense of optimism, you're not too far from Cookie's reality. The absence of hygienic standards doesn't just come from years in the saddle, it's practically a lifestyle. With breakfast, if you can call it that, finally settled, and the chuck wagon quieting like a toddler post-sugar crash, it's time to saddle up for a day of cattle wrangling. As you hoist yourself onto your trusty steed who seems to be having a severe crisis about cooperating, you can't help but think that this life, while certainly disheveled and questionable, is oddly fulfilling. It's a raucous blend of hard work, comical food, and a crew of characters who make even your relatives look like polished, primped models. And as the ranchers ride alongside you, with laughter and cowboy shouts splitting the morning air, you can't help but appreciate the absurdity of it all. Who knew an ordinary cowboy day could be as unpredictable as a pig in a prom dress? So grab life by the reins, dear fellow, because whether it's an angry cow or an enthusiastic morning rooster, you've officially stumbled into a slice of history that would leave even the most modern brunches quaking in their boots. So, buckle up and hold on tight, because this wild ride of chuck wagons, coffee chaos, and endless laughter is only just beginning. Chapter 5: The Cowpoke Call of the Trail Boss. Hey guys, welcome back to our cloud of comically chaotic history. Tonight, we're strapping on our spurs and saddling up for a wild ride into the life of a cowboy in the 1870 seconds, where dawn is less of a gentle awakening and more of a rise and shine, or you'll be trampled by ranchers and rogue cattle. Now, before we braid our manes and grab our lassos, just ponder. Have you ever been so tired that your bed turns into a gravitational vortex, sucking you back in every time you attempt to stand? Or perhaps you've experienced that glorious moment when your alarm rings like a fire bell, and all you want is to turn it into a modern art installation, a very smashed one. Alright, dim the lights, grab a fan, and snuggle under whatever oversized blanket is closest. It's time to plunge into the wild, creaky, chaotic world of cowboys, where snooze buttons don't exist, and sleeping in is a crime punishable by the unforgiving yowl of a disgruntled rooster. Congratulations, you've just woken up at dawn on a dusty Texas ranch in the 1870 seconds. Exciting, right? But here's a twist. You can't find your coffee maker because, spoiler alert, it hasn't been invented yet. Instead, you're about to meet Buck Malone, our trail boss, who has a voice as rough as a sandpaper necklace. Today, he's tasked with rousing the sleepy cowboys, and let me tell you, this isn't a gentle morning yoga session. As the sun peaks over the horizon, you can almost hear it yawning. Ugh, do I have to? The first rays spill across the land like syrup over a stack of unusually stubborn pancakes. And there stands Buck, silhouetted against the sky, looking like a rugged hero from a spaghetti western, if that hero had braces on his teeth and an overzealous morning personality. "Up and at 'em, you lazy saddle potatoes," he bellows, his voice ricocheting off the mesas so loudly it's practically causing vibrations in your breakfast burrito back at camp. The cowboys slowly emerge from their bedrolls, which might be more accurately described as glorified knapsacks with about as much fluff as a gerbil in a blender. Now, let's take a moment to ponder what's your excuse for snoozing in until noon. Got a busy work schedule? Is it too rainy outside? The cowboys, they didn't even have the luxury of sleeping in on weekends. Instead, they're jolted awake by Buck's vocal rendition of "Rise and shine, that is more. Wake up, or I'll throw your boots in the campfire." You shuffle around trying to locate your horse, who, let's be honest, is probably sipping dew off blades of grass with an air of indifference. Horses, it seems, are the real thrive at your own pace, creatures of the 1870 seconds. They'll take their sweet time while you fumble about like a toddler in a candy store full of enthusiasm, but completely clueless. And then Buck starts rallying the cowboys with exaggerated gestures, waving his hat like a conductor directing a rather frustrated symphony of sneezes, coughs, and possibly a herd of cranky longhorns. Just imagine the scene, a blend of dust and sheer cowboy chaos. Everyone trying to find their boots like they're solving a murder mystery on a game show. "Grab your gear, gents. We've got a herd to move," he bellows again. And with that, you might want to hold on to your hats, because you're about to jump into a day that'll start with 14 hours in the saddle. Because why make things easy on yourself, right? The cattle drive is more than just a romp across the range. It's a test of endurance, a game of patience, and let's face it, a glorious buffoonery in the face of nature itself. Picture this: you're sitting atop a horse, which is having a slightly existential crisis about its life choices, while 200 longhorns who, by the way, didn't sign up for this, are stampeding toward a destination that only the wind seems to understand. As the cowboys trot off like a band of merry misfits, you begin to appreciate the romanticism of it all, the horizon stretching like an overcooked piece of bacon, challenging your sanity. Yes, you might question your life decisions, but at least the view is picturesque. The sun paints the sky like an overly enthusiastic kindergarten artist. Now, amidst the dust, sweat, and inevitable saddle sores, Buck claps his hands, rallying the crew to keep the herd in check. Imagine him yelling, "Get along, little doggies," enthusiastically, like he's auditioning for a Broadway play about cowboys where the main plot twist involves an enduring struggle over a burrito that rolled too far. The cowboys nod, grumble, and respond with a chorus of diet-restricted snorts, and "Aye, boss," collectively sounding more like a rebellious pirate crew than a group of bona fide cattle hands. And there it is, the scent of dust, sweat, and a day filled with more amusing mishaps than you'd find at a kitten wrestling match. But in this odd slice of history, you also discover the thrill of camaraderie, painting the landscape with laughter as you blister under the sun. Yes, indeed, that's just what this adventurous life offers: slightly uncomfortable situations spiced with the absurd. So saddle up, dear dreamer, for every hour spent in discomfort leads us towards another story to tales of mavericks, misfits, and one particularly unfit burrito. The trail continues, and who knows what mildly intriguing absurdity awaits just around the bend. Chapter 6: Dust, Grit, and Bandanas, the Cowboy's Conundrum. Hey guys, welcome back to our sleepy expedition down the wonderfully warped corridor of history. Tonight, we're diving into the Dust Bowl grandeur of the 1870 seconds more thrilling than your aunt's stories at Thanksgiving and twice as messy. Imagine this. You wake up with a mouth drier than a cactus in July and hair that resembles a tumbleweed. Well, congratulations. You've just been transported to the Wild West, where coffee is non-existent. The only strong drink before noon is your will to live. And your beautiful new friend is a gorgeous palomino named Dusty, who's got a personality sharper than her hooves. And let's not even get started on her opinions of your riding skills. But I invite you to ponder for a moment. Do you ever find yourself wearing the same pajamas for 3 days straight, telling yourself, it builds character? Or maybe you've muttered an exasperated "not today" at your early morning to-do list, as if it were a pesky fly? Alright, as you slip deeper under your favorite blankets, let's set the scene for what a normal day looks like for our pal Buck Malone, the trail boss with more grit than a bag of gravel. Maybe slip on your fuzzy socks and imagine the luxury he wished he had while he runs his fingers through his unkempt hair, resembling a dust mop that's seen too much sun. As the first lazy beams of sunlight trickle over the horizon, Buck stands against an outrageously vibrant sky like an artist threw all the colors together in frustration. He looks out over the rough terrain, rubbing his brow beneath a weathered hat in an attempt to shield his eyes from the massive array of dust about to greet him, because here's the kicker. Texas in the summertime is just Mother Nature's way of saying you thought it was hot before. Surprise! And Buck, our seasoned cowboy, pulls a dusty bandana up over his nose like an overzealous bandit. Why? Because when the wind whips up those fine particles of dirt and debris, congratulations. You're breathing in what could generously be described as an earthy smoothie made of pure grit and a dash of existential dread. But let's make a mental note, this isn't how he envisioned spending his day. Can you hear that? Yes, that's the ominous sound of hoofbeats thundering as 200 Texas Longhorns decide to engage in a stampede of pure chaos, showcasing their collective lack of interest in following any sort of human instruction. You see, each morning, Buck is an unwilling member of a live-action game show called Cattle Drive, Survival Edition, where the rules are vague, and the prizes are often just blisters and dust-induced sneezes. Now, as the other cowboys mill about like confused adults at a potluck, Buck takes a moment to reflect. Ever tried to put together a piece of IKEA furniture without the instructions? That's like rounding up cattle without a plan. About as successful. 2 more misfits than actual cowboys. And more exclamations than actual movement. No one knows where to start. All right, gentlemen, time to wrangle these stubborn beasts. He bellows, but his words are barely audible over the cacophony of yap-yapping longhorns. His heartfelt plea turns into more of a theatrical performance, reminiscent of a dramatic soap opera. Somehow, everyone involved behaves as though they just finished the last slice of pizza and didn't quite know how to cope. As you observe the scene from your mental perch, the cowboys are sizing up the situation with varying degrees of determination and alarm, contrasting their bedhead hair with the determination of a squirrel facing down a hawk. Can you feel it? The absurdity hangs in the air like the last noodle on a keep-pasting dish of macaroni. And here's the kicker, without much time for breakfast, the cowboys opt for whatever was left from last night, probably resembling a ranch-style version of new and improved mystery meat. It's more about calories than nutrition. Akin to finding comfort in leftover pizza that's been living in the fridge once dreamt of cocktails and glory. Oh, and let's talk about feeding the horses. The horses are basically the royalty of the dusty ranch, eating as if they're planning for a marathon, while the cowboys find themselves scrambling around, snacking like feral cats at a buffet, unsure of what all these delightful dishes are, but ultimately just happy they exist. And just like that, the stampede begins. Buck gallops well, as gallops go in the context of a sleepy man being jostled on his mighty steed out into the wide open, where the dust spirals in glorious chaos, making him look like he should have opted for a magic trick instead. His bandana flaps in the breeze, creating an impression of a confused pirate caught in a mid-ride wind tunnel. Get along, little doggies, he shouts, half expecting those stick-legged longhorns to hitch a ride like it's the latest craze in public transportation. The humor, a wild blend of desperation and absurdity, gathers as they trample over rocky terrain filled with imaginary potholes and a distinctly cow-induced dread of direction. As the day rolls on, you would think it would be all sun-drenched glory. Yet time ticks away slowly as the sun blazes overhead like an unreasonably cheerful parent who refuses to stop talking. 12 hours in, Buck begins to reconceptualize the meaning of work-life balance. Is it emotionally taxing to sip on invisible cocktails while rounding up cattle? Absolutely. But through the dust, sweat, and moments of bewilderment, bonds form like thick desert wool. Underneath the craziness of the cattle drive, amid whiny horses and befuddled cowboys, you find laughter sometimes at the expense of a misplaced boot or a cow that clearly just didn't get the follow the fancy man memo. So here you are, Dust, still settling in the back alleys of your mind, wrapped up in the enchanting chaos of the Wild West. What more might unfold in this exhilarating, dust-filled adventure? Stay tuned, dear dreamer, because every turn brings a story waiting to gallop right into your heart. Chapter 7. From Stetsons to Saddle Sores, A Cowboy's Day. Hey guys, welcome back to our mildly chaotic journey through history, where today, we step into the boots of a cowboy, yes, those boots that probably smell like they fought a duel with a particularly stubborn skunk and lost. Tonight, we explore the early morning ritual of our friend Buck Malone as he gears up for yet another dizzyingly exhausting day in the Wild West. So grab your favorite comforter, cradle that pillow like it's a long-lost friend, and turn the lights down low. You might want to think twice about the breakfast burrito from last night, but if it's still looking at you like an old acquaintance, maybe it's time for a brave heart to shine. But hey, no judgment here. Let me ask you this. Ever been up past midnight pondering what to wear, ultimately deciding on the only thing left that doesn't smell like it recently participated in a mud wrestling match? Imagine living like that every day while dealing with the fact that your hat is your best friend in the world, and your bedroll is your only other option for comfort. And trust me, it's more rough than your toddler's first attempt at finger painting. So, congratulations, you've just woken up in the 1870 seconds. You're feeling a little like a wrinkled shirt left too long in the dryer, and the sun's trying to peel you like a baked potato under its relentless rays. Let's talk about Buck's daily wake-up routine, because waking up from a deep sleep is as satisfying as biting into an overripe peach that somehow managed to survive the trip to the market, and you're all in for this adventure. First, you're jolted awake by the cheerful sounds of, well, nothing. The peace of the early dawn is interrupted by the subtle creaking of the bedroll and the faint echoes of snoring, yes, from your fellow cowboys who, miraculously, seem to have settled comfortably into a deep slumber as if they're preparing for hibernation. As you stretch, every joint protests, like an old man after a dance-off, and you might question your decision to sleep on a floor of hay and dirt more accurate for a bed of nails, really. Buck squints against the sun, pouring through the tiny cracks in his makeshift shelter, wishing desperately for a cup of coffee that has the elusive taste of actual coffee. Instead, he's left with a choice between memories of decent grinds and an assortment of dubious stimulants that could make a goat jump through hoops. At least, that's the hope. Now, let's discuss that weathered Stetson beside you. It's not just a hat, it's a badge of honor. More sunburned, scruffed, and mysteriously scented than a series of unfortunate barroom encounters, this hat has seen more action than a Hollywood blockbuster. The wide brim? Pure genius for protection against that unforgiving desert sun. Think of it as Mother Nature's way of introducing a sunburn to your forehead with a side of heat stroke. After, a quick comb with your fingers to tame the glorious mess that is your hair, or what's left of it, you decide it's time to foot drag your way into breakfast. Perhaps it resembles something between gruel and, well, mystery. You all ever had something that looked like oatmeal, but had about as much flavor as a tattered sock? Yep, that's Buck's breakfast, designed more for survival than culinary satisfaction. With every spoonful, you contemplate whether it would be better to gnaw on a saddle horn. And just as you're begrudgingly swallowing your first bite of sludge, the day's chaos kicks off. Can you hear the distant rumble? That's the sound of about 200 Texas Longhorns, immensely unconcerned with your breakfast choreography, clomping around in a frenzy like they just found out that there's a fierce sale happening in the next pasture. Oh, but it's not just cattle. It's the arrival of a stampede, an event reminiscent of brunching hipsters trying to get the last avocado. Toast amidst rising global temperatures, utter madness. Time to don your Stetson, buckaroo. The weathered hat shielded you from unflattering angles this morning, and now it's time for the real rodeo. The stampede looks like a herd of disoriented tourists running from an overpriced gift shop. You leap into the fray, hooting and hollering, trying to organize this motley crew of bovines into some semblance of cooperation, which is about as successful as trying to convince a cat to take a bath. Get along, little dodgies. Buck bellows, though the Longhorns seemed far less inclined to get along, and more interested in varying degrees of chaos. And so begins the real spectacle. Buck, towering on his trusty steed, channels his inner ringmaster, half circus performer, half survivalist, attempting to coax the animals back in line while dodging dust clouds that rise like mischievous spirits. You ever had one of those awkward family gatherings where nobody agrees on where to sit, and the snacks are mysteriously scarce, leaving you grasping for the last remnants of chips? That's what Buck was experiencing, except with angry cows. Buck rides into the swirling dust, fervently sending a message that this is neither the time nor the place for the cattle to experience their life decisions. After hours of wrangling, sweat, and perhaps a few curses muttered into the wind, Buck manages to push the herd into something resembling a straight line, hoping that they'd understand the importance of following his guidance. Yes, aspirations are high as the sun climbs over, bringing with it a heat that afflicts every inch of your dusty existence. The realization dawns on Buck with every passing minute. His day is only just beginning, not because he pressed the snooze button on his responsibilities, but because to be a cowboy means accepting that you may also double as a circus performer, a grant writer for misbehaving cattle, and maybe even a diplomat negotiating peace treaties between wayward calves. As the sun sets soon, about the time Buck gets to thinking he may have just signed himself up for another dance with saddle sores, remember, this is all just another day in the Wild West, one that leaves you chuckling to sleep, picturing the day etched in your mind like the barn door's faded paint. And yet, here we are, a little dustier, a bit lonelier, and absolutely longing for those slices of life mixed in with grit and laughter. Chapter 8, The Bedroll Brigade. 14 hours of cowboying chaos. Hey guys, buckle up your saddles, because tonight we're diving into the rugged and rollicking lives of those cowboys who make you feel like your 9 to 5 is just a leisurely stroll through a flower garden, one that might also have a couple of angry bees buzzing around. Picture this, an array of ruggedly handsome cowboys, Mexican vaqueros, and adventurous European immigrants, all huddled together in what can only be described as a camp that could simultaneously host a barbecue and a low-budget horror movie. Yes, you heard it right. The scent of leather mixed with campfire smoke. Have you ever experienced anything more aromatic? As you wrap your mind around that delightful image, let's ponder the real hardships of cowboy life. Ever considered the oddity of sleeping in a bedroll that looks like the aftermath of a very hostile cuddle with a 5-horned unicorn? I mean, how do you pack that thing? Just roll it up and throw it over your shoulder. Now, there's a phrase that makes you question your life choices. Or, better yet, what about the days where home is a smelly patch of dirt located miles away from any semblance of civilization? Sure, nothing could be better than waking up to birds chirping, but let's be honest, in the Wild West, they were probably just cackling at your misfortunes. So, congratulations, you've just woken up in the 1870 seconds, the heyday of the cattle drive era. The sun greets you like a dehydrated house cat, and you think twice about getting out of that oddly lumpy bedroll filled with the remnants of last night's supper, whatever that was. The wild-haired baritone cacophony of snorts, snores, and absolutely no privacy welcomes you into a day that's already several notches past early. Let's set the scene, shall we? You're lying there, much like a pancake left too long on a griddle, wondering if those creaks and groans are your joints, protesting, or merely the bedroll's way of talking back. The sun's rising with more enthusiasm than a border collie chasing after its own tail, and it's clear, morning is officially here, whether you're ready for it or not. Now, how's breakfast looking? Bad idea, right? Picture a culinary masterpiece that somehow resembles a sad version of the previous night's beans, best described as having the character of a damp sock. As you take the first tentative bite, you ponder whether chewing accompanied by silent tears could be considered a culinary art. Thus, you might just be the next great pioneer chef, with a specialty in what is this supposed to be? And isn't that the essence of cowboy grub? As you shuffle around, collecting essentials, an old hat, a dusty pair of boots, and a philosophical approach to why you're even here, you come across your fellow cowhands, a motley crew if there ever was one. They may not be singing, but they sure are grumbling about yesterday's misadventures, where seemingly everything went astray, much like your uncle after one too many family reunions. Here's the kicker, cowboys didn't just show up, sleep, and eat. Oh no, their days were laden with mischief and mayhem. Ever tried herding a group of cows that behave like hyperactive toddlers in a candy store? That's a daily ritual. You can only imagine the chaotic sight of these longhorns, tramping around like well-trained elephants, but really just a gaggle of misfits waiting for their chance to scatter. And trust me, they're inexplicably clever, almost unnaturally so, as if they were plotting against you in the quiet of the night. But back to your fellow cowboys, who are now mulling about like ducks waiting for breadcrumbs. These are men with stories etched into the lines of their weather-beaten faces, yet collectively united by their miserable conditions. Forget discord. This is a brotherhood of hot weather, ravenous insects, and sleepless nights stretching on like the never-ending list of chores back at the homestead. The Mexican vaqueros, in their finely woven sombreros that have seen better days, look as if they've just come from a fiesta, if that fiesta's punchline was a face-off with a cactus. Meanwhile, the European immigrants, with their peculiar but endearing accents, swap tales of old country troubles, talking about cabbage fields and colorful markets, as if trying to inspire a westward movement out of their very bones. Ah, cabbage, no, my friend, I mean wrangling longhorns. Meanwhile, the young American men swagger around, bursting with bravado only rivaled by a rooster too proud of its crow. They're out to prove something, maybe that they can survive just one more day without a proper bath, which is always a noble pursuit in the dusty heart of Texas. As the sun blazes overhead like an uninvited light fixture that refuses to turn off, these brave souls begin to fold their bedrolls. Picture this scene. A collection of grim-faced cowboys wrestling with their bedrolls as if they were attempting to tame wild burros. Each roll and tuck resembling an interpretive dance that might very well drive a historian mad with laughter. And as they trail off into the desert's grip, with hands stuck together by the sticky remnants of breakfast, a singular truth settles over the camp. 14 hours in the saddle might just be the least of their worries. Think about it, it's like preparing yourself for a Colosseum battle every single day, armed only with a love for adventure, a tattered hat, and an iron will deeply rooted in the genuine absurdity of life. Welcome to Cowboying, folks. You'll hear Buck shout among the din. You signed up for this, remember? Suddenly, there's a stampede approaching in the distance, echoing what could only be described as a tragedy unfolding in dramatic fashion. So gear up, because just like a band of circus performers, the day has only just begun. And as the sun begins its daily assault, there's a good chance you'll find yourself chuckling softly in your sleep, convinced that the events unfolding around you are simply far too ridiculous to ever truly happen. Sleep well, my friends. The Wild West will be waiting for you when you wake up. Chapter 9. Boots, Bugs, and Bedlam. The morning ritual of cowboys. Hey guys, hold on to your hats, because tonight we're going on a toe-curling, spine-tingling journey more exciting than a cat at a dog show. Imagine cracking open a history book and finding inside an entire chapter dedicated to the daily life of a cowboy in the 1,870 seconds, where mischief and mayhem greet you as surely as the morning sun. Ever wondered about the sheer acrobatics of shaking scorpions and spiders out of your boots before you get dressed? Yes, you heard that right. Because why just wake up to coffee and toast when you can also wrestle a small desert army lingering in your footwear? Please, if you find yourself amused, consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing only if you enjoy this, of course. But for now, dim the lights, prop up your pillows, and let's explore the wild and wonderfully absurd life of our cowboy friends. Have you ever pondered how many bugs could fit into a single boot? Or thought about what kind of philosophical discussions cowboys might have while shaking them out? Do they ever argue about the proper way to evict a scorpion? Is there a cowboy code of conduct specifically for boot emptying? And, speaking of everyday challenges, have you ever tried to put a sock on when a family of spiders has made a cozy home in it? It might feel like an episode of Survivor, Laundry Room Edition. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the 1,870 seconds, the heart of the cattle drive era. It's dawn, and the sun strikes you like that one relative who always ambushes you with a hug at family reunions. Your bedroll lies strewn across a patch of dirt that you can only pray used to be something friendly like grass or wildflowers. Now it's just a smorgasbord of dust, occasional rodents, and who knows what else. The first task of the day, a thorough boot inspection, a life-saving ritual that would make any entomologist weep with joy. Picture this. You're sitting there, a rugged warrior of the plains, prepared to shoo away tiny yet terrifying critters. As you vigorously shake your boot, the latter seems to respond with a collective screech as it spits out an army of spiders that scatter like a one-hour sale at a fancy dress store. Judging by the weight of the boot in your hand, it's like wrestling an alligator that's been living on a diet of nothing but questionable snacks. Let's not kid ourselves, putting on boots should be an Olympic event. Armed with nothing but grit and a willingness to question your life choices. Pushing down on that boot feels like trying to press down a runaway jack in the box. Your foot only lands halfway inside before it seems to fight back, saying, "Not today, cowboy." You'll need every ounce of bravery you can muster when it hisses softly. Do you really want to do this? After successfully conquering the boot battle of the outback, you do your best to look presentable because, after all, first impressions matter, even in the Wild West. But gratefully, the others around you are hardly encouraging professional standards. You look around at your fellow cowhands, and they're resisting the urge to turn that helpful boot shake into an impromptu social convention. You can just hear Buck loudly proclaim, "If you don't get a spider in your boot, were you even cowboying?" Let's talk about breakfast. Ah yes, the famed cowboy breakfast. You shuffle over to what is left of last night's beans, hoping the pile has somehow morphed into something resembling a culinary masterpiece. Instead, you're met with a pancake-like blob that looks suspiciously like yesterday's socks. Someone hands you a cup of coffee that tastes like a turpentine cocktail, and the only real victory is making sure you can swallow without grimacing. Does it make you more like a rugged pioneer or a hapless caveman, preparing to throw a rock at an approaching mammoth. Hard to tell, honestly. And as you try to choke down yet another delicacy, spare a thought for those enchanted souls who think they can brunch like they do back in town. Gym memberships mean nothing when beans serve as your only protein. But lo and behold, a sudden clattering sounds from nearby. A few cowboys are arguing about the elusive mystery of who forgot to tie up the horses last night. It's as if you'd stumbled onto a public debate about the meaning of life. But the punchline is that every word exchanged could very well lead to the recovery of a long-lost saddle. They seem intent on discussing this topic with about as much seriousness as a dog debating the merits of fetching vs rolling in the mud. Soon you hear the unmistakable sound of hooves tapping your way. The cattle need rounding up. It's time to shake off that sleepy stupor and welcome back your newfound cowboy reality. Imagine a grand parade of Texas longhorns trotting over the hill, a sight akin to a school of immense, stubborn fish flopping out of water and into an ice cream factory. The cows appear blissfully unaware of how chaotic this morning shall be. As you, our intrepid cowboy, gear up to face the day ahead, 14 hours in the saddle seems a mere formality when compared to the soul-crushing determination and the deft art of spider wrangling beneath boot soles. Because with life in the Wild West, every moment is a juxtaposition of ridiculous absurdities you can't make up or escape. Enjoy your well-earned sleep, dear cowboy, and welcome the wild and endless absurdity that lies ahead tomorrow. Because remember, in this world of bucking broncos and endlessly whimsical moments, the day may be over, but the laughter of the Wild West is just a dream away. Chapter 10. Dust, Hooves, and Haphazard Hilarity, the Great Cattle Drive. Hey guys, get ready to tip your hats and hold on to your saddles, because tonight we're diving deep into a cloud of dust that would make a sandstorm feel a bit shy. Picture this, it's the 1,870 seconds, and we're about to embark on a journey that's wilder than a ferret on caffeine. Ever wondered what it's like to be part of a cattle drive, where 2,000 Texas longhorns lumber north, kicking up enough red-brown dust to rival a poorly attended mud wrestling event? Fantastic, because I'm about to paint a picture so vivid, you might wake up with a mouthful of grit. But before we lug our bedrolls into the dusty depths of cowboy chaos, do us a solid. If you find this ride as entertaining as a kitten in a cardboard box, lean over and give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe only if you truly enjoy it, of course. Now, dim those lights, set your fan to pleasant breeze, and snuggle up, for it's about to get refreshingly absurd. So, you might be asking yourself, what exactly does one wear when embarking on a 14-hour trek surrounded by longhorns? Do cowboys ever find their way back home after following a particularly spirited steer? And what in the world happens if your lunch falls from your saddle and becomes the buffet for a hungry cow? Very important questions, my friends. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the midst of a cattle drive. As you sit up, a massive cloud of dust greets you like an overzealous concert crowd. The view is, well, about as clear as your neighbor's conspiracy theory. Hooves thunder under the summer sun, kicking up enough debris to earn a 5-star rating from the Dust and Dandelion Society. As you navigate through this whirlwind, the first thing that hits you is the smell. Imagine if a barn had an aroma of questionable decisions. The rich and robust scent of sweat mingles with the unmistakable fragrance of cattle, which, let's face it, is comparable to a gym locker on a hot July day. You take a moment to appreciate the natural bouquet, which some might describe as eau de cow Wellington. You spot the lead cowboy, a grizzled man with a mustache that seems to have its own postal code. He's shouting orders that twist and turn like a badly penned country song. Keep 'em movin', boys, if that steer thinks he can do the cha-cha with the wagon. We'll have a real barn dance on our hands. It's reminiscent of a game of cat and mouse, only the cats are 1,200 pounds and a bit cranky. This certainly isn't your low-key Sunday brunch. This is more akin to an outdoor circus, with each longhorn performing its own chaotic act while trying to navigate the samurai-like maneuvers of weathered cowhands. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, though. It's time for breakfast, or as cowboys call it, fuel for the impending chaos. When the sun barely creeps over the horizon, you shuffle over to the cook wagon, an ancient contraption that seems designed to withstand both time and extreme culinary creativity. The chef, a giant of a man, greets you with a grin that could disarm a rabid boar. Breakfast is served. Today's special, beans on yesterday's biscuit. You glance morosely at the pile of food that has the vibrant appeal of a tumbleweed caught in a rainstorm. Beans again. Does anyone ever think to ask the beans how they feel about this daily abuse? You wonder aloud, hoping some whiskers of truth might tickle your fancy. But the real drama unfolds when it's time to drink. A steaming cup, to put it mildly, contains the kind of coffee that could have a dual career as paint thinner. Ah, it's robust, the cook proclaims, as you hold the cup like it's about to launch into space. With one sip, you quickly classify this coffee as a lifestyle choice rather than a beverage. Is there a support group for Cowboy coffee survivors? You ponder, but no one seems to hear over the cacophony of grumbling bellies and lowing cattle. After managing breakfast, it's time to mount up in preparation for the hours to come, hours filled with a breathtaking mix of stunning landscapes and the unending challenge of keeping 2,000 longhorns in line. You swing your leg over the saddle and settle in, feeling about as graceful as a hippo on a pogo stick. The cattle, blissfully oblivious to your existential crises, begin to move, and all you can do is hold on for dear life, hoping you don't inadvertently become a cowboy seatbelt. The sun climbs higher, turning the dust into an oppressive blanket, and every stir of air feels like being coated in corn flour. You can't help but wonder if you've unwittingly become the world's worst piñata, filled with unevenly distributed cow snacks. 14 hours in the saddle is no joke. By the end of this dusty spectacle, your backside will take on a new definition of sore. As the day wears on, it stretches longer than a cow's gaze upon grass after being told there's none. Yes, it's a backbreaking saga of cattle and chaos, wrapped in unintentional comedy. Yet, amid the mayhem, friendships are formed over shared annoyances, like the time a particularly spirited steer refused to move, resulting in a standoff that could only be described as Genghis Khan versus a stubborn goat. So, as you sway beneath the dusky red horizon and take in the breathtaking absurdity of life on the cattle drive, remember, the adventure may have its bumps, breathtaking views, and daily doses of unpredictability, but laughter and camaraderie keep the spirit alive. So close your eyes and dream of the Wild West, where camaraderie, chaos, and the occasional tumbleweeds are free to roam. And remember, each day is but a humorous encounter in the life of a cowboy. Chapter 11. The Art of Cowboy Legroom. Saddle up. It's gonna be bumpy. Hey guys, welcome back. Buckle your saddles and hold onto your hats, because we're plunging into a world where the only thing creakier than the wooden floorboards is the cowboy attempting to rise after 14 hours in the saddle. That's right. Tonight, we're exploring the peculiar artistry of the cowboy's legroom. You might be wondering, how did they manage to strut their stuff with legs as finely tuned as a Swiss watch while perched on a bucking bronco? Well, my wrangling friends, prepare for some mildly riveting revelations that may or may not leave you feeling as stiff as that cowboy's ride home. But before we ride into this rugged beauty of the Wild West, do us a favor. If you find yourself chuckling like an over-caffeinated jackrabbit, go ahead and thumbs us up, and if you're feeling particularly adventurous, subscribe, but only if you're genuinely into it. We wouldn't want you to feel pressured, unlike a cow on a long-distance drive. Now, dim those lights, set your ceiling fan to gentle zephyr, and get cozy. Stretch out like a cowboy taking off his boots after a long day. Think about it. Did cowboys ever sigh over the dishonesty of pants sizes? Were they secretly envious of those brazen ballroom dancers gliding across the floor without a saddle horn? And what were those poor steer thinking, being driven 14 hours without a beverage? Just imagine the longhorns and lattes cafe menu that could have saved us all a bit of trouble. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1870 seconds, and guess what? You're astride a horse, towering above the Wild West like a cowboy-shaped balloon animal at a birthday party. Look down at those long, bow-shaped legs of yours, perfectly adapted for a life in the saddle, steering half-wild cattle as if you were conducting an orchestra of bovine mischief. With every bounce of your steed, you realize your legs are not just limbs. They're an extension of cowboy spirit. Such mighty appendages should surely be booking tickets to the next rodeo, or perhaps starting a fitness regimen called Legs of the Wild. As you sway gently atop this gallant creature, the wind rushes against your face, carrying with it the smells of sun-baked leather, farm animal delight, and unmentionable surprises I'd rather not dive into. It's like standing in front of a smorgasbord of aromas, best described as eau de cow, the unofficial scent of cattle drives. Your nostrils might even twitch in equal parts disgust and nostalgia, reminiscent of that time your frenzied aunt attempted to cook cabbage at a family gathering. Let's just say it stepped over the line into questionable territory. Now, let's take a moment to consider the sheer absurdity of your position. A cowboy's legs can't just be ordinary, no. They must have developed the capacity for sitting, securing, and maintaining the most precarious balance, while dealing with steer antics. Ever tried standing on one leg while your dog joyfully wrestles with your forgotten lunch? Yeah, that's basically every cattle drive. As you interact with the herd, your legs make up a language all their own. Twisting, bending, stretching, they gracefully shimmy together to round up stubborn cattle that've clearly mistaken this day for an unsanctioned game of hide and seek. You shout, "Hey!" But do the cows listen? Never. They might as well be practicing dodgeball, bovine edition, as they gallivant across the dusty landscape. Think of those hours in the saddle, clinging on like a barnacle on the hull of a ship. While your friends binge watch the latest drama, you're busy channeling inner circus performer, maneuvering your legs to prevent that wily steer from sidestepping the herd. It's a delicate dance that would leave any choreographer slack-jawed in awe or just confused. Are they herding cows or auditioning for a hoedown? They might ask. Little do they know, it's both. Oh, but here comes the real kicker, those insets of obsolescence. Your legs are expected to sustain 14 hours of this rodeo action, all while battling fatigue like a wrestling match between a grizzly bear and a stick of butter. What is this madness? Each hour feels like an Olympian workout, the calf raises of doom paired with the ankle twist tango. Such movements are about as graceful as trying to walk in roller skates that have been spiked with mustard. Finally, as sunset sets fire to the horizon, you glance down at those heroic legs. You've got no choice but to tip your hat proudly. They've carried you through a day of chaos, clinging to an animal that might remind you of an over-caffeinated squirrel, you know, if squirrels were 1,200 pounds and sliced up air with their hooves. And so, as you inevitably find yourself rubbing your thighs in desperate need of a good old-fashioned stretch and wishing for modern conveniences like foot massages or ice packs, let this serve as a reminder. The cowboy life might feel like a perpetual leg day at the gym, but with every chuckle, every dust cloud, and every stubborn calf, you are crafting stories that will echo in the tales of the Old West, long after you ride into the sunset. So, when you close your eyes tonight, don't just dream of 8-legged organisms in space. Picture the epic adventures of cowboy legs, heroically navigating history one awkward leap at a time. Yes, they rode, they fought, and they might just be the unsung heroes of the Wild West. Chapter 12. The heated hilarity of cattle and cowpoke coziness. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we find ourselves in a sun-soaked spectacle, more sweltering than your Aunt Meg's potato salad on a July day, the Wild West. That's right, we're about to embark on a journey through the sizzling summer days of the 1,870 seconds, where a cowboy's cheeks weren't just red from the sun, they were blushing like a tomato at a romance novel convention. Picture yourself roasting under that midday sun, wondering why Mother Nature thought scorching hot was the ideal temperature for living your best cowboy life. Have you ever wiped the sweat from your brow, only to realize it's evaporated before it even reached your shirt? Ever thought about how long it might take a longhorn to audition for a musical number if cows could sing? What if your horse held secret grudges against you for daring to exchange carrot snacks with its neighbor? And honestly, how badly do you think a cowboy wanted an ice-cold lemonade in mid-July versus that slightly hoof-scented coffee? Let's dim those lights. Set your ceiling fan to vortex of comfort and nestle in. You've just woken up in the 1,870 seconds. Welcome to a time when the only thing worse than a cactus in your boot was having to ride 14 hours in the saddle with a herd of cattle that seemed to have no sense of personal space. Imagine you're perched high on your trusty steed. The prairie grass is waving like an excited audience at a country concert, and the air shimmers with heat, a mirage that might just be your sanity slowly retreating. As you glance around, you can't help but notice the absurdity of the situation. You're somehow putting your foot down on a dusty trail, surrounded by cattle that seem as lost as your sense of direction while on a road trip without GPS. Those Texas Longhorns, with their majestic horns and bewildered expressions, are a living testament to the fact that sometimes the battle of the big boys isn't just about size, it's about who's more stubborn. Spoiler, on a cattle drive, The trophy goes to whoever refuses to budge from their snack of grass. Now, let's get really into it. The sun is slathering you with warmth that makes you feel like a slab of beef in a sizzling skillet. Your shirt, drenched with sweat, feels like it's gained sentience and is trying to crawl off your body. You're wiped out, but here's the kicker, this is only the beginning. You've still got a hefty half-day ahead of you, riding into the horizon, calling upon every ounce of cowboy tenacity you can muster. Did you know that every cowboy had a special method for reining in their cattle? It wasn't just about technique, it involved enough theatrics to earn a standing ovation. As you yank on those reins, your biceps might start quivering as much as your dear steed's pride. Surely, you think, my arms are now an Olympic weightlifting event. Those calf raises in the saddle, they weren't just futile exercises. They were cardio challenges scheduled to test the limits of endurance. If you'd been keeping score, you were already 100 points ahead, preparing for that nap you'd definitely take, not that you'd ever admit it. But let's not forget about the mischievous critters. Between chase scenes featuring what I can only describe as bovine ballet, you've also got the localized flora and fauna crashing your prairie party. Ever had a horsefly that buzzed around your ears like an over-caffeinated drone? Well, you're going to find out just how good you are at swatting while maintaining the delicate balance of a cowboy's core. An unbelievable feat, considering you're also trying to prevent a rogue steer from launching itself down a ravine. Named, "Oh no, not again." Occasionally, in the midst of all this chaos, a moment of clarity hits you. What if you had just tried a quick ride on a carousel instead? It would have been so much easier than dealing with these ornery cattle. But alas, you remind yourself that this is the Wild West, where life is chaotic, and textbook definitions of comfortable seem absurdly irrelevant. Cattle drives were all about burly cowhands facing the heat, while vying for dominance over an animal that acted as if its life goal was to discover how many pairs of boots could be ruined in a single day. And so, as the sun begins its descent, throwing the sky into a flaming daze of oranges and purples like someone spilled an artist's palette, you think back to the challenges of your day, a day that had more highs and lows than a rickety roller coaster at a county fair. You're dreaming of a cool bath, perhaps filled with the soothing qualities of iced lemonade and a dash of cow central to your wild journey through the history of cattle driving. You've persevered through the dust, heat, stubborn cattle, and the never-ending humor of it all. You've wrangled, whisked, and woefully wedged your way through the world where every second feels like an eternity, while your legs beg for endless stretches in the comfort of a rocking chair. So, as you finally lay your head down tonight, remember, those heroic cowboy legs not only told a story of grit and determination, but they also hinted at the absurd theatrics of navigating life on the range. Rest easy, my friends, as you ponder life as today's sleeping cowboy. Dream of adventures that may or may not require a heaping side of ranch dressing, and remember, history like a good cattle drive is best experienced with a pinch of laughter. Chapter 13, The Lasso of Lunacy, Cowboy Edition. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're straddling the saddle and galloping headfirst into a world that's none too gentle. It's like getting a bear hug from a cactus, uncomfortable with a side of confusingly hilarious. The Wild West of the 1,870 seconds. Picture this, huge herds of Texas Longhorns wandering about, looking as bewildered as you do when trying to find your keys in the fridge. You'd think cattle would have a sense of direction, but alas, they seem to think every path leads to Grassville, population, them. Now, if you're anything like me, you've occasionally found yourself questioning your choices between spaghetti and tacos for dinner, or whether your yoga mat might actually just be a very pretentious napkin. But, do you ever wonder how much mental fortitude it takes to wrangle a herd of uncooperative cows while perched atop a four-legged diva that probably ate your breakfast before you woke up? Yeah, that's the cowboy life for you. Before we dive into the wrangling madness, go ahead and give that like button a soft tap, could you? And don't forget to subscribe, but only if you feel a genuine sense of joy welling up inside. If not, maybe just keep scrolling while I ponder what a tumbleweed has to do to get some respect in the cattle driving world. Let's get cozy, not that cozy you feel when your cat curls next to you, but the kind where you're squeezed into a saddle that's seen more action than a WWE wrestling ring. Dim those lights, turn on that ceiling fan, don't forget to manage the hurricane setting. And let's unveil the wild ride of cattle, driving a journey that starts at dawn and doesn't end until you prefer a cactus stabbing over more hours in the saddle. So, imagine this. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1872. The sun is already blasting at you like a relentless spotlight. Your horse, let's call him Mr. Prancy McNay, is snorting with all the enthusiasm of a teenager at a car show, and on the ground below, a platoon of Texas Longhorns is staring vacantly like they forgot the punchline to a joke no one told. Where's breakfast? You ask yourself, but before you can even think of fried bacon, your saddlebags whisper sweet nothings about hay and not so exciting jerky. Yeah, they were all about rugged simplicity back then. Hey look, is that a stone? Let's eat that. Which brings us to your trusty steed. It's from the school of, I'll only run if it pleases me. You might as well have tied a tortoise to a tree for all the speed you're getting. Now, here comes the best part. You spot a rogue yearling, a particularly rambunctious little calf, with the attitude of a toddler who just discovered candy. In your mind, you can almost hear the shriek of destiny. You're tasked with lassoing this wayward creature while riding a horse that seems more interested in taking a nap than chasing down a flying chunk of muscle. What could go wrong? Right. As you grip that rope and swing it in the air, it feels like you're auditioning for the lead role in The Lasso of Lunacy. Ever tried to swing a rope at a moving target that's wiser than your average ghost? Trust me, it's not like throwing a frisbee on a calm picnic day. It's more akin to juggling flaming chainsaws during a tornado. You think your upper arm could survive the drama? Yeah, let's just say being a cowboy is one way to attain an accidental arm of steel, or at least the arm of an over-caffeinated squirrel. Meanwhile, the other cowboys are hooting and hollering from a distance, clearly judging your legendary technique. As you launch the lasso, you're about as graceful as a hippo in roller skates. I won't go home until I've conquered this calf, you declare, as the rope tangles around everything except for its intended target. C'est la cowboy life. Just when you think the situation can't get any more dizzying, Mr. Prancy starts sidestepping like he's auditioning for Dancing with the Stars. He's kicking up dust, neighing melodically as if voicing the world's most theatrical aria. Cows, now utterly confused by your antics, begin stampeding in a chaotic, synchronized swimming routine ditch the Olympics, right? Who needs medals when you have longhorns performing a pas de deux in the middle of the Oklahoma prairie? And don't even get me started on that horsefly buzzing around you like it's auditioning for a superhero movie, uninvited, annoying, and absolutely relentless. 1 second you're cocking your lasso, and the next you're swatting your head harder than someone trying to get rid of an old rumor. Remember that creative chaos you romanticized? Welcome to your reality check. After what feels like a lifetime, and about 40 insightful moments of inner dialogue, seriously, if your inner self could win an Academy Award, it would you. Finally managed to snag that yearling. Yes, after half the prairie judging your efforts, you're finally victorious. You feel like a cowboy god, ready for the celebration parade, except to be fair, most of that parade would include more cattle and less confetti. As the sun finally begins its descent, casting a radiant glow over everything like a beautiful filter on a terrible selfie, you contemplate that fantastic melange of defeat and triumph. You've embarked on a dusty battle marked by perseverance and absurdity, and yet the spectacle of being a cowboy simply promises more exhilaration around every bend. In this wild ride, you've come to learn, it's not all about the destination as much as it is about the unexpected quirks that pop up along the journey. A day spent valiantly wrangling cattle, battling flies, and mastering the art of avoiding those threateningly agile yearlings. So, as you pull up your dusty boots and prepare to rest your weary cowboy head, spare a thought for the next time you face something chaotic. Sometimes, embracing the chaos is the best part of the ride. Sleep well, my friends, and may your dreams be filled with rope tricks and oddly sincere cows. Chapter 14, The Lasso of Lunacy, Cowboy Edition. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into the Wild West, where the sun beats down like an overzealous neighbor with a leaf blower at 6 a.m. Picture this. You're uncomfortably nestled in a saddle that's had more rides than a haunted amusement park, desperately trying to lasso a Texas Longhorn that's basically serving up a masterclass in evasive maneuvers. Spoiler alert, the cows are winning, and your arms are reminiscent of spaghetti, floppy, and pleasantly confused. But before we get tangled up in the ropes of history, let's take a moment to appreciate the art of the cowboy. Riding hard, wrangling cattle, and battling the heat, sometimes all before breakfast. And speaking of breakfast, let's just say their morning meals were far from the Instagrammable brunch spreads we enjoy today. Ever tried jerky and beans for brunch? Tastes just as fun as it sounds. So go ahead, give that like button a gentle press, but only if the thought of chuckling at this dusty era fills you with joy. Now, dim those lights, adjust that fan to the breeze, but please don't blow my hat off setting, and let's ponder the pressing questions of cowboy life. Like, how did they manage to keep their mustaches so magnificent while also grappling with saddle sores? And can you get a decent cup of coffee if every pot could double as a weapon against rogue rattlesnakes? Or how about this? Ever been so thirsty you'd willingly drink the murky remnants of an old trough? Yeah, life on the range really puts things into perspective. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the year 1872, the height of the cattle drive era. You're stretching in your makeshift camp under a wide, cloud-dotted sky that probably has more wild aspirations than you do. Just know that breakfast isn't going to start with a warm croissant or a soy latte fresh from the wharfs of San Francisco. Nope, it's time for the good old-fashioned cowboy diet. Predicted flavor range flavorless to uninspiring. The air is heavy with the scent of leather and sweat, mixed with the musk of a barn, which, let's be honest, is as pleasant as it sounds. Grab hold of your trusty steed, let's call him Dusty McStubborn. You'll want to have a chat with him about your mutual morning goals, primarily his insistence on standing perfectly still, like a statue of a horse who forgot to sign up for the rodeo. You are, however, determined to keep your morning optimism intact. As you already know, today's adventure begins as any good cowboy story does, with an alarming lack of focus. Let's talk about danger, shall we? Now, if you've ever had a rough day, try spending 14 hours battling both the sun and a herd of Texas longhorns. Picture this. As you aim to secure your lasso, this glorious rope of destiny, it feels like you're coiling an immense sea serpent rather than a tool for cattle gathering. Your arms ache from the constant effort, reminding you that yes, you still exist in a body that isn't quite as young as it used to be, and could do with a few less beef jerky snacks, and maybe some hand yoga. The moment you're ready, Dusty, bless his hooves, decides he has an itch that absolutely must be scratched on the nearest cactus. Yep, amidst the rattling chaos, you grip the saddle horn like you're clinging to your last free Wi-Fi connection. Hey, that's real cowboy stamina right there, folks. Cowboys are a funny breed. They wear weathered hats and boots battered enough to rival a child's toy after a serious tantrum, all while being able to spin a yarn about last night's poker game that would make Shakespeare proud. But what they don't share at the campfire is how utterly ridiculous it is trying to wrangle a critter that possesses the raw energy of a caffeinated squirrel. Now, flashback to your roping escapades. You whirl your lasso over your head like you're trying to audition for a highly questionable circus act. As you release the loop, it spins through the air like the hopes of your last Tinder date. Maybe, just maybe, this time you'll snag that errant calf who decided it was prime time to audition for a starring role in Cows Gone Wild. Just as you think you've finally got a handle on this chaos, the longhorn does what only the swiftest of creatures can do. It manages to dodge your lasso faster than your brain can process disappointment. As you watch the rope tangle itself around everything but the calf, it flings itself into a semicircular chaos, making you feel like the least competent cattle herder in the annals of cowboy history, the living embodiment of an oops meme, but fret not. In the companionable banter of hermanos on horseback, the other cowboys cackle loudly, mocking your heave-ho attempts with the love and charm only a fellow cowboy can muster. It's oddly comforting. Just think of it like your friends roasting you. After you embarrass yourself at a karaoke bar, except here, the stakes involve your dignity and a few free-floating cow parts. After rounds of tugging and grunting, accompanied by the sudden realization that Dusty has a working relationship with every bush on the plains, you finally wrestle that calf into submission. And there it is, victory tastes a bit like dust, mixed with the residue of your chaotic escape from utter humiliation. A cowboy legend is born. Slice of life is served. As the sun begins to set and the world softens into a hazy gold, you lean back against your saddle. Who knew being a cowboy involved this much cardio? And maybe just a sprinkle of existential crisis along the way. But as another day wraps up in this pastoral ballet of cattle insanity, remember, amid all the chaos of the cowboy life, navigating the absurd is what we do best, one tumbleweed at a time. So while you prepare to close your eyes, don't forget that sometimes it's not about the roses in life. It's about how well you can wrangle a rogue calf while trying to avoid road rash on your morning stroll. Sweet dreams, fellow cowpoke, and may you lasso your own victories in the land of dreams. Chapter 15. Nightmares on the Range, when longhorns run wild. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're diving headfirst into the kind of gut-wrenching adventure that makes horror movies look like light-hearted rom-coms. Picture this, it's a dark, moonlit night on the Great Plains, and the stars are twinkling like the eyes of 1,000 mischievous squirrels planning their next raid on your provisions. You've settled down for a cozy night under the open sky, only to be greeted by a thunderous stampede that puts your heart rate firmly into the needs medical attention zone. Now, before you go frantically hitting the like button, as if you hope that will somehow calm the imminent stampede, let's get comfy. Dim those lights, set the fan to gentle breeze, but don't blow my hat off, and let's ruminate on some crucial cowboy questions. What do you do when your trusty steed starts having an existential crisis during a stampede? How exactly does one explain to their horse that fleeing from a herd of panic-stricken Texas Longhorns is not a viable career option? And what, pray tell, does an 1,870 seconds cowboy think about when they absolutely, positively need a snack, but are fated to ride out a night of chaos with only cold beans and regrets? Congratulations! You've just woken up in a boisterous 1872, smack dab in the middle of the cattle drive era, a time when your average cowboy had the kind of day that would require multiple cups of coffee, and possibly a therapist in the modern world. Now, imagine you're cozily tucked in beside your campfire, the smell of beans wafting through the air, and you hear it, a low rumble that sounds alarmingly like a freight train full of cows. You're probably thinking, is that just a bad burrito, or a herd of 2,000 longhorns stampeding toward my camp? Spoiler alert, it's the Longhorns, and they've decided you're on their must-trample list tonight. The sound is unbelievable, a thundering crescendo that rattles your bones, and somehow turns your stomach into a tightrope walker. Ever seen footage of a stampede? It's a chaotic ballet of mooing madness, and clattering hooves that could send even the most hardened cowboy scampering for cover like a frightened kitten in a bathtub. You grip your saddle horn like it's the only thing keeping you from falling into a pit of despair. Your trusty steed, let's call him Betsy McNervous, suddenly decides that standing still on a hill while facing 2,000 screaming longhorns is no longer in her job description. As the first wave of cattle thunders past, you feel the ground shudder beneath you. It's as if the earth itself is trying out for a role in a disaster movie. Betsy snorts, her eyes wide, betraying a hint of alarm that suggests she would rather take off running than, well, take off running with you still on top. Listen, girl, you might say, if they're headed to Mexico, we're going to meet them halfway. You thought the wild, in Wild West, meant something cute and charming, like a ferret running through a field of daisies. No, my friend, it means this, sheer panic and the imminent threat of being turned into a cowboy pancake. Now, let's unravel that horror for a moment. The pile of longhorns clocking in at a whopping 2,000 head isn't just a herd, it's a flying congregation of leggy, ornery beasts, all united by their shared terror and a rotten sense of direction. Imagine a high school dance where no one knows the steps, but everyone is determined to pile on top of each other in the most chaotic ways. You might not even want to think about how utterly ridiculous this would look if you fast-forwarded to today. Watch out for the stampede. Quick, everyone, get your smartphones out for TikTok. Cattle in the air. You might yell as you pull Betsy around. The night is suddenly filled with more dust than you thought possible, coating your skin like a cheap Halloween costume. The air fills with cow smells that really shouldn't exist unless you're standing in a cheese factory gone rogue. Cloven hooves thunder past, creating vibrations that make you question the fundamental laws of physics faster than you can say, I hope they don't crush my camp. Survival mode kicks in, your heart races, and the adrenaline suggests that this would be an excellent time to rethink choices. But you launch into heroic mode, trying to encourage Betsy to back away from the quivering, bellowing mass of panic. Stay calm, we got this. You shout, possibly to no one. Wherever there's chaos, there's comedy, and you might find yourself thinking, is this how I'm going to meet my end? Trampled by cows while my buddies roast marshmallows and laugh? But here's the kicker. Amidst the chaos, time seems to slow down. You might even have a strangely profound moment of clarity. While thousands of hooves threaten to demolish your very essence, you realize this is life, this is cowboy life, and it's absurd. As the dust settles and a rebellious calf breaks through your camp like it's auditioning for an action film, you might take a deep breath, chuckle, and appreciate your place in that sweeping nostalgia of 1,000 870 seconds America. You've survived the stampede barely. And somehow, you're thinking this will make one heck of a story to tell at the next campfire. So there I was, brave cowpoke against 2,000 longhorns, and a ladle of beans. And as you nestle back into your blankets beneath the stars, you can't help but laugh. Life as a cowboy wasn't always about the quiet ride. Sometimes it was about laughter amidst the chaos, navigating stampedes with a sense of humor sharper than any rusty knife in your saddlebag. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler. May your nights be filled with adventures even crazier than this one, where you're always the hero of your own story, and hopefully not the lunch of a longhorn. Chapter 16. Saddle Up, Buttercup. A Day in the Life of a Vaquero. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're saddling up for a journey cooler than a piñata stuffed with ice cream. Together, we're diving into the ins and outs of cowboy life during the 1,870 seconds. Picture this. A day so packed with riding, wrangling, and questionable food choices that even a modern-day overscheduled corporate employee would promptly call in sick just hearing about it. You'll want to grab some blankets, ideally not from the same place as your last burrito, and find that perfect spot, because we're about to gallop into the world of dusty trails and cattle. But before we ride off into the horizon, let's have a quick chat about what being a vaquero, or cowboy, for those keeping it simple, actually meant. Like, how did they manage to squeeze more into a single day than you do in a week? Ever thought about what it would be like to experience an existential crisis while on horseback? Or how many varieties of beans might one have to endure in a single week? Spoiler, the answer is too many. And do we dare ask how often did these hardened horsemen ask their horses for personal advice on life decisions? Congratulations, you've just woken up in 1872, in the thick of the cattle drive era, where every sunrise came with the promise of adventure, or at least a strong possible chance of tripping over your own boots while trying to find breakfast. So, as we ease into this lively narrative, let's talk about a fellow named Diego, a Mexican vaquero with a grin that could light up the night sky, and that's saying something in a world of flickering campfires. With his dark eyes shining mischievously beneath that oversized sombrero that could probably double as a small table, this guy was about to share some wisdom straight from the dusty trails. Imagine yourself alongside Diego, the sun creeping over the horizon, painting the plains in hues of gold and coffee. You can feel the warm breeze brush against your skin as the earliest signs of chaos begin to stir. The aroma of leather and, well, let's not beat around the bush. The unmistakable scent of horse sweat permeates the air like a half-forgotten recipe for disaster. Amigo, he says with a twinkle in his eye, there's a lot you'll need to do today. And, if you thought your to-do list was daunting, let's just say it was nothing compared to what a cowboy or vaquero experienced. Between grooming horses, mending the numerous rips and tears on yourself from last night's rodeo, and dealing with the occasional unfriendly cattle who might think your leg looks like dinner, you were already looking at a day filled with delightful mayhem. First things first, breakfast, bad idea. Diets in the cowboy world were less about kale and quinoa and more about, well, mostly beans, and whatever dehydrated mystery meat that was beef, but could just as easily have been yesterday's. Bootlaces. The type of meal that leaves you contemplating your life choices instead of fully energizing you. Ever tried chewing through dried mud? That's a bit like biting into a cowboy breakfast burrito. Next up was the long haul, the saddle. You might think of sitting on a comfortable couch while watching Netflix as a marathon, but let me tell you, the vaquero hopped into the saddle for an easy 14-hour ride. Yep, 14 hours. By lunchtime, you'd know every single detail about your horse's back. Daisy, you might haphazardly call your steed, as you continue to explore that spot where the saddle rubs your leg raw. We could both use a little respect here. It's all fun and games until your behind starts asking for a health insurance plan. As you thud along the rhythmic sway of horseback, Diego leans over and says, "Never let anyone tell you the cowboy's life is easy." You can hear the laughter in his voice, colored with warmth and wisdom, a reminder that horseback riding is just part of the charm of cowboy life. Somewhere between getting jostled around and figuring out the intricate art of staying in the saddle, you'd consider the various responses to that awful burrito you had for breakfast. Now imagine the sounds around you, the call of birds overhead mixed with the faint echo of a harmonica from a nearby camp. That's right, cowboys had hobbies too. I mean, have you ever felt inspired to write poetry about saddle sores? You could easily share your thoughts while strumming that old guitar. Roses are red, violets are blue, my saddle's too tight, and I just stepped in stew. And let's not forget interactions with cowhands. Oh, the camaraderie. With Diego cracking jokes like he's the world's oldest and funniest vaquero, the banter flows alongside the cattle. "You've seen that old bull over there?" he chortles, nodding to an ornery longhorn with a remarkably bad attitude. He thinks he's a Broadway star, his only act, running like an idiot when I try to wrangle him. As the day drags on, your legs may be screaming louder than the faint chorus of cow moos, and you wonder what genius thought calling it a day in the life of a cowboy was a good idea. But don't worry, as evening approaches, visions of campfires and damp chili simmer on the horizon, promising an end to the saddle discomfort, at least for the moment. And while you can't deny that today was a delightful mix of absurdity and hard work, you can't help but laugh alongside Diego. Cowboy life was a grand tapestry woven with moments both heroic and humbling. So, when you finally snuggle into your blankets tonight, remember, the life of a vaquero may have been tough, but at least they had a loyal steed and one heck of a mess of stories to share around the fire. So, rest easy, fellow traveler. May your dreams carry you to dusty trails and belly laughs by the campfire, preferably with a snack that doesn't hold the name burrito in any universe. Chapter 17. Saddle Sore Shenanigans, Coffee and Cattle. Hey guys! Tonight we're plunging into a day in the Wild West, one even an over-caffeinated squirrel would find a bit overwhelming. We're talking about cowboys, those rugged souls who spent their mornings chugging enough black coffee to fuel a small town, all before embarking on a 14-hour odyssey that could rival a triathlon without the spandex or the athleticism, really. So, before we dive in, make sure you've settled in. Dim the lights, crank up that fan just a bit, and slide under your blankets like you're entering a cozy burrito of comfort. If you enjoy this journey through the absurd annals of cowboy life, consider liking and subscribing. But, only if it tickles your fancy. Now, let's ponder a few questions together. Have you ever wondered what companionable coffee conversations sounded like in the Wild West? Or how a cowboy's breakfast could make you reconsider your lunch plans? And let's not even start on the true weight of a cowboy's saddle, because sitting on that for hours while contemplating existential horse dilemmas is a whole new kind of cardio. Imagine the buyer's remorse on that purchase. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1872, where the smell of leather and horse sweat fills the air like an oddly popular cologne. Picture a wiry guy named Diego waking up before the sun, his trusty horse, Daisy, looking at him like, "Really, more coffee?" Now, there's a scent that'll wake you up quicker than a surprise cold shower. Diego pops the last drops of his charcoal black coffee like a modern-day espresso shot, the warmth cascading down his throat, cutting through an invisible layer of grit that might as well have been a permanent residence. The coffee burns, but it burns good, slicing through the morning fog like a hot knife through butter, if butter is made out of actual cactus goo. A solid start to a day that was only going uphill, especially if Daisy continued to eye him suspiciously about that burrito incident from yesterday. Right after coffee, you'll have your first dose of uncertainty, breakfast. Now, here's the kicker. When it comes to breakfast for a cowboy, think less delicious omelette, and more. Is this even supposed to be edible? Imagine poorly dehydrated beans, the kind that make you question whether you're eating food or playing a sinister game of guess that texture. Scarfing down the last few scraps might just lead Diego wondering if he should have turned in for a salad instead. Then it's saddle time. If you thought rising from bed was tough, try fitting into a saddle that feels like it was made for a two-headed giraffe. You hoist yourself up, and you're in for 14 hours of perpetual bouncing on the back of Daisy, who, by the way, might have some entire life goals of her own. Ever felt like a mismatched sock in a washing machine? Well, that's about what 14 hours in the saddle feels like, except here, you can't just yank yourself out. "Daisy," you mutter during the first hour, "our therapist said we should work on communication." But I didn't think yelling at you would be involved. As you thud along on the rhythmic gait of Daisy, let's consider the surroundings. The sounds of distant birds cawing, the rustle of the grass as if it had its own opinions to share, and the occasional rattle of a nearby cactus, which, fun fact, might just be plotting against anyone who dares pass too close. Diego leans over to share a grand bit of wisdom. Never let anyone tell you the ordinary cowboy life is boring. It's merely a barrage of mildly groundbreaking decisions over the course of an eternity. About 3 hours into this day-long journey, you might start lamenting your breakfast while eyeing the fresh countryside. Honestly, How many beans must a cowboy consume before he cries out in agony for a good old-fashioned burrito? Just picture you and your fellow cowhands, trading quips like you're on the stand-up comedy circuit, spitting out the most ridiculous life advice, while simultaneously questioning why you chose this as a career path. Man, remember that time we thought herding cattle would feel like riding a roller coaster? As the hours drag on, and your legs start whispering sweet nothings about retirement, you glance at Diego, rolling his eyes toward that ornery bull over there, trying his absolute best to capitalize on whatever bad attitude he could muster. See that? He thinks he's an opera star. Last week, he tried to sing baritone for a whole 10 minutes before running off into the bushes. Never knew a longhorn could have such dramatic flair. At some point, the realization sets in that the day might actually end in the comfort of a campfire and a bowl of chili, hopefully one without too many chunks of mystery meat. The thought carries you through the hot sun and saddle sore hips, as the promise of laughter and camaraderie wraps around you, the only reward worth enduring this considerable horse-based endurance test. So let's clip-clop through life's absurdities because, really, who doesn't enjoy a chuckle wrapped in a saddle blanket of discomfort? Rest easy tonight, knowing that the life of a vaquero wasn't just brutal, it was an endless string of stories and laughter, maybe not the kind you'd share at a dinner party, but stories nonetheless. With that final thought, let the warmth of nostalgia snuggle you tight during your dreams, perhaps leading you to another cattle drive, or better yet, a properly stuffed burrito. Chapter 18. The Cowboy's Closet, a Bedroll and a Dream. Hey guys, tonight, we're diving into the dusty, sun-soaked life of a cowboy, where possessions were so minimal, you'd think they were overqualified minimalists, like they took one look at Marie Kondo and said, "Hey, even my horse doesn't need that much stuff." We're talking about a bedroll that contains the entirety of a cowboy's worldly goods, a spare shirt, some suspicious-looking socks, a straight razor, because, obviously, standard hygiene practices are really important when you're herding cattle, and a tattered photograph, which is neither here nor there but definitely seems to have seen better days. So, cuddle up and take a moment to appreciate not just the height of fashionable ruggedness, but also the depth of absurdity in this cowboy's choices. I mean, who needs their whole life in a suitcase, when you can fit it all in a bedroll and undergo daily existential crises throughout the day? Imagine asking your modern-day friend to pack for a road trip with just a bedroll. Can I bring my essentials? Nah, just some burrito wrappers, and existential dread will do just fine. But first, let's get settled. Dim the lights, grab your favorite blanket, and let's prepare for a journey back to the 1870 seconds, where personal space was a foreign concept, and comfort was just a rumor. Now, let's reflect on what it means to be a cowboy. Have you ever wondered how many times they questioned their life choices at the price of a decent cup of coffee? Ever remembered a time when chores felt like they came with a side of horse smells and dust storms? What would you use to clean a straight razor after a long day of cattle driving besides the hopes and dreams of city folk? Perhaps you've asked yourself about the contents of that mysterious tattered photograph. Is it a picture of someone named Lulabelle? Or was Lulabelle a fictional character playing the lead in that? Cowboy's past daydreams? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1875, when the sun was as bright as a diamond in the rough and cowboys wore their ruggedness as a badge of honor along with dirt and an occasional goat hair. You sit up in your bedroll, well, it's more of a sack, really, because the cowboys weren't really known for their interior design skills, and glance at your belongings. This is everything you own, packed lightly like a traveler's nightmare. Why did I think I could live sustainably? You ponder, as you look at your sad little collection of items, and the thrilling adventure of a straight razor begins. Let's get into the day. First off, what do you think the fragrance of a cowboy's spare shirt smells like? Sun-baked isolation mixed with the distinct aroma of, I haven't changed this in a week. One whiff might just convince anyone that cowboy life is a modern-day punishment devised for indecisive people. It encourages you to make fast decisions about soap versus a water trough. Your shirt might now qualify as a form of self-confessed nostalgia, best if viewed from a distance. Indeed, a dusty companion that exclaims, "Remember the days of good old cotton." But not too close. Your nose might start having a mutiny of its own. Next, there's the matter of socks. Let's be honest, socks is a generous term here, more like foot swaddling that has seen more sunsets than you can count. The poor things live in the constant fear of being mistaken for an obscure form of non-perishable goods, like Are socks even made of cotton? Or did we just find an old mop? Every step taken is a new adventure, unraveling the full, tragic narrative of their lives. Is that a tear or a style choice? You may never know. Honestly, who needs a personal shopper when sock mystery prevails? Now, consider that straight razor for a moment. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with a cheek-piercing, vintage razor while trying to impress a cattle herd? Picture this. You're trying to groom yourself by a riverbank, staring into the shimmering water, wondering if your reflection gives off handsome rogue or urban legend. You reach for the straight razor, and naturally, it slips and flings into the creek like a fish out of water. There goes my morning routine, you sigh, and I was only trying to achieve clean shaven off the grid chic. As for that tattered photograph, well, it's a relic that sparks curiosity. Is it a faded image of dear Lullabelle, the love who got away? Or maybe a remarkable instance of a horse that achieved mystique in its own right? Instead of packing a proper camera, your cowboy photojournalism comes in the form of this coffee-stained treasure. Each glance at it earns a soulful reflection somewhere between longing and utter confusion. It's the kind of photo that makes you wonder, is this a memento of love, or just my horse impersonating a diva? Surrounding it all is the soundscape of nature, wind howling like a melodramatic poet, and crows cawing their unsolicited opinions about day-to-day cowboy life. Your day is wrapped in a tapestry of sights, sounds, and a hearty blend of hilarity and confusion, a combination ideal for dreaming or lamenting your minimalist choices. Yet, surprisingly, you find comfort in it all, a life that, despite its sparse offerings, is filled with vibrant stories as rich and chaotic as any bustling city nighttime adventure. So, rest easy tonight with the thought that being a cowboy was not just about rugged survival. It was a daily jumble of laughs, uncertainties, and moments of sheer absurdity tied together by a bedroll, a few articles of clothing, and a razor that never quite knew what it was doing. Tomorrow might just bring another round of comedic mishaps in this lively tapestry of cowboy life, a reminder that even in the wildness of the West, there was always laughter waiting just beyond the diva horizon. And, who knows, maybe tomorrow you'll redefine the cowboy aesthetic with a new pair of fresh socks, and that's something to dream about. Chapter 19. 40 miles to marginally comfy, the boot of hard knocks. Hey guys, tonight, we begin our restful journey in a land where the closest thing to luxury was a slightly less worn saddle and a horse who didn't eat oats like a true teen, exploiting the system like a pro. Yes, you guessed it. We're headed straight into the heart of the Wild West, where the cows roam freer than your uncle after Thanksgiving dinner, and every cowboy clings dearly to the most valuable possession they own. No, not their trusty steed, or their ever-expanding collection of embarrassing stories, their hard-earned cash. Let's just say, a hefty $35 stuffed into a boot was as good as winning the lottery, while still living in your mom's basement. So, dim the lights, put on a fan, because let's face it, who needs air conditioning when you can soak in the fresh aroma of sweaty cowboys on a hot day, and make yourself comfortable? Let's all take a moment to appreciate how convenient modern life is. Ever tried to fit a month's salary into a single sock without it feeling like a scene from a bad magic trick? Or maybe you've thought about how it feels to wrestle a cow instead of your inbox. And don't even get me started on a day that begins with the words, "Put on your saddle and let's go." That's not exactly your standard morning meeting. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1870 seconds, the cattle drive era, where wakey was used less for gentle nudging and more for shouts over the chaos of 2,000 cattle that just realized they could absolutely stampede the nearest muddy creek. How refreshing. Let's talk about that boot with $35 tucked inside it. Imagine this. You've toiled under the blazing sun, sweat mingling with dust until you're a walking abstract Picasso painting. After a grueling month of herding cattle, your dreams of new boots, and maybe a shiny belt buckle that says "World's Okayest Cowboy" dance in your imagination like a mirage, until you reach down and discover that what you've got is actually the content of your earnings, lying snugly in the corner of your boot drawer. Ah, sweet relief! Except it's still a boot, and you have to extract the cash without dislocating your wrist. That $35 is your golden ticket to hit the town for a few essential things. A modest meal that won't make you question your life choices, or maybe just enough beans and cornbread to last until, well, your next grueling shift. In today's standards, that just sounds like a Tuesday evening dinner while watching a documentary on TV. Asterisk, insert dramatic gasp here. Asterisk, You mean, I could have just ordered takeout and not worn boots at all? Let's imagine the moment you realize just how hard it is to dig out what's practically wedged between your toes. Each time you fumble with your boot, it's like you're attempting an advanced yoga pose titled The Disgruntled Cowboy. Finding that cache feels like archaeologists trying to dig out the lost city of Atlantis while blindfolded. You're sweating, contorting your body into weird shapes, and questioning your existence. Why did you think wearing 2 pairs of socks was a good idea? It's all in pursuit of a pile of crumpled bills that could barely cover a night in the local saloon where they serve whiskey that could knock a horse flat. You might as well be wrestling a herd of cattle at this point. Now, let's take a moment to compare this to the gloriously tech-heavy, corporate existence of today. Ever tried opening your wallet only to find that pesky card you need is lost in the labyrinth of your purse? Now imagine that same struggle, but with moisture and a boot that smells like it's been home to an unsuspecting family of rodents. Asterisk. Spoiler alert. Asterisk. They aren't paying rent. When you finally extract the cash, it's like holding the Holy Grail, except it also smells like sweat and regrets. You can practically hear the dollar bills singing, "We're here for a good time, not a long time." You take stock for a moment, thinking, are you going to spend it all on new boots and a dime bag of jerky? Or perhaps, just maybe, you'll put it towards a supper that makes your life feel just slightly less tragic. Then, just when you think your financial woes might be alleviated, the reality of cowboy life hits you harder than a rogue steer. That's right, a cozy winter shelter isn't going to finance itself. Those $35, while fantastic, barely buy you a handful of memories before the harsh wind sweeps into your heart with the elegance of a save your money for tomorrow sermon. What do you do then? Pretend it's all fine, while listening to your stomach growl louder than the unmistakable sound of cattle mooing in the distance. Thus begins your journey through the relatively cheap thrills of cowboy existence. Each day melts into the next, with a routine as steady as the ground under your feet, until a cow decides to bolt, and then it's an Olympic sprint of who wore it best, between you and your horse. Ah, but what's life without a little drama? So, as you lie back against your pillow tonight, remember the life of a cowboy, where the simple joys are completely overshadowed by the absurdities of never getting fully paid, of wrangling with nature, and of the tenacious hope that winter might just magically become a cozy blanket as you huddle beneath your tattered quilt, clinging to the last vestiges of warmth that $35 could ever buy. And perhaps, within that whimsical chaos, you'll find yourself drifting into safer grounds filled with dreams of lower prices and less worn boots. Chapter 20. The Milking of Expectations. Cattle and Comfy Campsites. Hey guys, gather around and get cozy, because tonight, we're riding down memory lane to the Wild West, where the cattle are nervous, the cowboys are not so gently spirity, and luxury was essentially a well-worn saddle pad. Ever wondered what life was like for a cowboy who just wanted to do something as simple as settle down for the night with their 2,000 best bovine buddies? Are they just a group of vegan unlikely heroes, waiting for their day in the sun? Or is it more like a really stressed family camping trip gone horribly wrong? Spoiler alert, it's definitely the latter. So, grab your favorite snack, perhaps something that suspiciously resembles beef jerky, and dim the lights, because we're about to whip up a comedic cauldron of campfire tales, cowboy style. As night falls, and the world fades into twinkling stars, let's explore the cozy chaos of a cattle drive, where the only real luxuries are the faint sounds of mooing and the slightest scent of a campfire mixed with regret. How do you prepare a cozy campsite when you've got 2,000 hungry longhorns more interested in munching on sagebrush than settling down? What's going through the mind of a cowboy who's trying to find a flat spot without stepping in an unfortunate landmine of nature's design? And how exactly do you juggle all of this while maintaining your dignity and maybe not falling asleep in a pile of hay? It's a conundrum, as perplexing as trying to fold a fitted sheet, something that probably wasn't even invented yet. Congratulations. You've just stepped into a cattle drive in the 1,870 seconds, and let me tell you, it's a sight to behold. The sun dips below the horizon, the orange and purple sky like some kind of paint-splattered masterpiece, while the faint smell of hay lingers in the air, mixed with just a hint of freshly baked regrets. Here you are, surrounded by a sea of Texas longhorns, each one angling for a prime spot near the creek, immersed in an odd blend of camaraderie and impending chaos. Now, let's paint that scene even further. Your job tonight is to find the perfect crescent of gentle rise that sings to the cattle. Hey, settle here. We've got water and maybe a soft breeze. The challenge is akin to picking the best table at a restaurant where every seat smells a bit like the bottom of a cowboy boot, so you know it's going to be entertaining. You start your hunt, dodging the occasional moo, as though it's a particularly aggressive dodgeball, because we all know that a cow's hello can pack a wallop. Now, let's compare this to your modern-day struggle. Imagine trying to pick a seating arrangement at a family gathering. Grandma insists on putting you next to Uncle Larry, who only talks about that one time he claimed he wrestled a bear. Spoiler, he absolutely did not. Being a cowboy herding a bunch of longhorns is remarkably like that. You wrestle with your desire for a peaceful evening, while dodging the not-so-gentle nudges of cattle who would rather not be settled. Thank you very much. As you finally find a gentle rise, yes, you immediately encounter the next great conundrum. How to contain this motley crew of 2,000 hungry animals long enough to settle in for the night without inadvertently becoming a star in America's funniest cattle drives. With no GPS and only your instincts, and maybe a map from 1863 that looks like it was used to wipe off a spilled drink, you set up your camp, ferrying supplies that feel heavier than your existential dread about the stock market. The rustling of grass is your symphony while you lay out your bed grounds. After all, what is a camping experience without a little back pain? Greeted appetizingly by the sounds of bubbling water from the creek nearby, you'd swear it's the only time in life you dream of sleeping on dusty hay instead of a cloud-like mattress, just to show off your dedication to the cowboy life. You spread your blanket out on the open ground, weighed down by the constant threat of an unexpected moo, a nightingale in the opera of the Wild West. And let's not forget the ever-present threat of hungry longhorns. Each moment is like an extreme game of hungry hippos, except the hippos are cows with a penchant for sprinting. Not all heroes wear capes, but some do wear cowboy hats, and come equipped with buckets of grain to coax these beasts into submission. Who knew cajoling cattle was its own form of Olympic sport? And yet, here you are, juggling your surroundings while attempting to convince them that their dinner will appear if they simply sit on their behinds and behave for just a few minutes. So, as the stars glitter above in a celestial display that feels just a bit like God gave up on the design process halfway through a game of doodles, think of the cowboy you are. Or, more realistically, the cowpoke you aspire to be. The one who can set a bed ground, wrangle some cattle, and maybe, just maybe, cross your fingers that no one pinches a tent stake and takes a nap worshipping the earth. Embrace the absurdity of cattle life, and as you nestle into your cozy bed tonight, remember the cowboy's plight. Not just herding cows, but hoping for quiet moments amid the delightful chaos, all while trying to avoid becoming part of the bovine dinner party. Just close your eyes and drift off into the soothing hum of the Wild West, where cattle are plentiful and comfortable sleep is always a fresh distance away. Chapter 21. A moonlit ride and the strains of the saddle. Hey guys, gather round and get comfy, because tonight we're hitching our wagons to a star, and not just because it's a convenient spot to hang our hats. We're plopping ourselves down into the Wild West of the 1870 seconds, where the cowboys are as restless as a toddler after a sugar rush, and the cattle are, well, just plain confused. Ever wondered how a cowboy manages to sneak in a good nap while riding the range? Or why 14 hours in the saddle was merely the first act of a long, bewildering play? It's like an extreme sport crossed with a family reunion, awkward pauses and lifestyle choices optional. Now, I invite you to dim the lights, turn on that fan, and prepare for the delightful chaos of a cattle drive. Picture it, a sprawling herd of Texas longhorns, each with a flair for creativity in how they rearrange your plans. So, grab a snack, preferably something with fewer hooves, and let's dive right in. What do you think went through a cowboy's mind as he rode under a sky so starry it made a freshly sprinkled cupcake look like a sad banana? Or how, on earth, did he stay awake while keeping an eye on 2,000 bovine buddies who totally weren't plotting to escape into the wilderness? And let's not even touch upon the delightful aroma of those boots definitely need washing, but hey, I guess that's just part of cowboy charm. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the 1870 seconds, a time when a good night's sleep was as mythical as a unicorn in chaps. It's nighttime, and you find yourself on the outskirts of a sprawling cattle camp, with the soft glow of the moon illuminating a scene that's straight out of a sleep-deprived cowboy's dreams or nightmares, depending on how you look at it. The night is cooler than a saloon's second-best whiskey, with a gentle breeze that makes the tall grass sway like it's trying to dance away from the situation. You're tasked with night watch, sitting tall in your saddle, trying to remain vigilant despite a deep and abiding longing for a pillow that, let's be honest, probably wouldn't be much more than an old saddle blanket crammed with wait for it more hay. As you trot along the perimeter of the herd, the sound of clopping hooves echoes like a distant metronome, perfectly in sync with the occasional moo, as if the cattle are attempting to harmonize their way into a restful night. The best part? Each lowing sound can be interpreted as either reassurance or a slightly judgmental bleat directed at your choice of midnight snacks. Thanks, guys. Oh, the stars. They blanket the night sky, more abundant than promises made by politicians, and trust me, that's a lot. If you didn't know better, you might insist that the stars were placed just so to distract you from the fact that you've only had one cup of coffee since dawn, and it was made from beans, some young cowboy probably stamped on during a very long day. Imagine being chased by a herd of wild thoughts, as chaotic as the cattle themselves talk about multitasking. You'll find that your mind begins to wander. What if the cows are holding a secret midnight meeting, plotting their escape to a rather more lush grassland, sans cowboy oversight? You'd have to face a movement for greater pasture rights, and trust me, no one wants that on their resume. Your saddle creaks under you like an old wooden chair in a ghost story, reminding you it holds more tales than a local storyteller by the fire. Every shift can feel like an epic motion picture. The Cattle Chronicles, the return of the unfortunate cowboy. At this point, you're half expecting a group of cows to pull out popcorn just to enjoy your plight. But truly, a cowboy's routine is an absurd dance between vigilance and wild imagination. Scanning the horizon, the shadows play tricks on your mind, and for a moment, that large rock over there looks suspiciously, like a rogue steer. It's like the world's worst game of Guess Who, where the guesses are all cattle, and the stakes are your sanity. You're thankful for the soothing sounds of the herd, but you wonder, will they ever tire of nibbling on grass, or is that routine as timeless as howling at the moon? Also, can we take a moment to appreciate how the vastness of the night sky holds more questions than a toddler at a family reunion? Remember when you swore you'd catch just a quick nap, only to find yourself awakening hours later with the style and grace of a grizzly bear after a buffet? Yeah, those dreams are far less romantic on night watch, I assure you. As you scan the expanse, the cattle shift restlessly, seeking their version of the perfect spot, a concept not unlike your struggle to find the ideal place to sit in a crowded cafe. Only here, the stakes are higher, and the coffee remains stubbornly absent. You see a couple of cows trading places, like they're engaged in an elaborate game of musical chairs with no discernible rules. You're left with the unique mental gymnastics of contemplating life's meaning while listening to the diabolical giggles of a few too smart steers trying to set their own nighttime rendezvous. Ah yes, the essence of cowboy life where rest comes as fleeting as a shooting star, and 14 hours of saddle time is merely the first round before you roll into the next exhilarating day. And with that, you breathe in the calm of midnight, your stalwart companion against a herd that doesn't care about your dreams for the future, only their immediate need for more grass. But the adventure is far from over, where the night carries with it its own serenade and the promise of more utterly ridiculous cowboy diaries to come. What a life, a yarn spun under the stars, an ode to the wild, and a reminder that sometimes it's not just about the journey, but the delightfully strange detours along the way. So, as you settle deeper into your thoughts, let the hum of the night carry you away, just like the tales of heroic cowboys long past. You might not get a good night's sleep, but you sure will gather quite the story to share come morning. Chapter 22. The Grounds for Slumber. Nighttime Tales of the Lone Prairie. Hey guys, gather round and get cozy, because tonight we're sprawled out in the Wild West, where even the prairie dogs have more elbow room than you do on your last flight. Yes, you heard right, 1,870 seconds cattle drives. We're talking open ranges, rugged cowboys who look like they haven't seen a bar of soap in a month, and an abundance of Texas Longhorns that could easily win most likely to cause a traffic jam. But before we saddle up for this delightful adventure, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and, comment. Just don't be that person who leaves a bad review after one grumpy day. If you enjoy tonight's whimsical journey through mildly interesting history, give it a thumbs up, but only if you actually enjoy this. No pressure, of course. Now, it's time to dim the lights and turn on that fan, just to give your imagination a gentle breeze, if nothing else. As we prepare to dig into the rich tapestry of cowboy life, let me ask you, ever wondered how a cowboy manages to avoid face planting into the dirt while being serenaded by a symphony of mooing? Or why it's entirely normal to think of your trusty steed as your clearly more capable co-chief of the sleep-deprived Herd Watchers Club? And what on earth does one do to woo the locals? Spoiler alert, your chances are about as high as a tumbleweed in a windstorm. So buckle up, dear listener, because congratulations, you've just woken up in 1870, somewhere in Texas, where every sunset seems to whisper, ready for more mischief. The land stretches before you, a canvas of rugged beauty painted in earth tones and sprinkled with the occasional rock that's just there to ruin your chances of a good night's sleep. You lie back on your bedroll, feeling the cool, solid earth beneath you. There's an irony to it all. You've traded your cozy mattress for a heap of wool and dreams, but hey, it's basically camping, right? Just without the s'mores, campfire stories, or any semblance of comfort. The stars twinkle like they're the world's worst fairy lights overseen by an unbothered moon that suspects she's the main act on this magnificent show. At night, the prairie can feel like an enormous stage, and you, my friend, are both the lead and the understudy, just waiting for your big moment when the cattle decide it's an excellent time to practice their escape maneuvers. But let's talk about solitude. See, the life of a cowboy is about as sociable as a cactus in a balloon party. You gaze into that wide-open sky, embracing the vastness around you. It's both liberating and a little chilling, making you feel as if you've accidentally signed up for an improv class that you didn't know existed. Your thoughts are free to roam, but that doesn't mean they're making wise choices. The sound of hooves falls against the earth like a mellow drumbeat, punctuated by the shrill cries of coyotes in the distance, reminding you that no one is really ever alone out here. Ever thought of why you're kind of hoping they just critique your evening routine instead of coming to join in? Spoiler, it's not because you're suddenly excited to toss rugged living aesthetics aside for a camping buddy. And, let's not forget those cattle. Each one has its own personality, and you, my friend, are now the reluctant bouncer at the wild bovine soiree. They shuffle and nudge at each other nervously, as if they've just received a group ticket to a less than thrilling rodeo show, and you're stuck at the door making sure no one hooves it off onto greener pastures. You often wonder, what are they even discussing? Are they plotting their next act of rebellion? Look, Bessie, wherever you were before this, I bet it had better grass. Follows with a melodramatic sigh, oh, the struggles of being a bovine. As you work to tighten your grip on the reins of sanity, your saddle creaks like that old recliner that everyone insists is vintage. Inside your mind, you picture yourself living the proverbial dream, or more accurately, you vividly imagine that every blade of grass is out to insult your spotty understanding of life choices leading to this moment. Why didn't I just stay in town and become a blacksmith? You might wonder, plotting out the different paths you could have taken. Perhaps you could have been sheltering under a warm roof somewhere, critiquing the quality of barbecued beans instead. But alas, you've signed up for an express ticket to the great outdoors complete with questionable hygiene practices and, oh, a livestock cohabitation agreement you clearly forgot to read. The stars above shine with the brilliance of 1,000 tiny lighthouses, guiding the thoughts of equally confused souls on their own paths. You find yourself mulling over profound questions, such as, is this the reason your laundry is never done? Where have you put the flapjack recipe that's been haunting your dreams? And just how far is it to the nearest coffee shop? But rest assured, my fellow slumber seeker, be it under the vast expanse of prairie skies or huddled close to your warmest blanket, it's all part of the journey. You're riding into a night filled with enigmatic wonders and slightly overwhelming absurdity, where serenity and chaos are simply dance partners twirling whimsically around a campfire. So, inhale deeply and find some comfort in those thoughts, laugh gently at the creatively chaotic life of a cowboy, and drift peacefully into the sanctuary of adventures yet to unfold. For here in the Wild West, where cattle roam and dreams conspire, the night is alive with more stories than the cows have hooves, and trust me, that's a lot. Night falls, and so does your eyelids, as you unravel into the sweet embrace of sleep. But remember, the journey isn't over yet, there's still much more ridiculousness yet to unfold in the life of our charming cowboy, so hold on tight. Chapter 23. Life on the Range, a cowboy's crusade against cattle and critical thinking. Hey guys, ready to gear up for another night of Wild West whimsy? Grab your 10-gallon hats and a mug of something that may or may not resemble coffee, because tonight we're diving headfirst into the raucous, unpredictable, and slightly stinky life of a cowboy in the 1870 seconds. Trust me, it's going to be a journey more exciting than finding a four-leaf clover in a field of longhorns, and significantly less itchy than a haystack. Before we gallop away into the sunset, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and feel free to drop a comment, or, a gentle yawn if you're already fading fast. Just don't be that person who leaves a review complaining that the cattle were too loud. We can't all be morning people. Now, dim those lights, crank up that fan, yes, even if it's just for ambience, and get comfy. Close your eyes and envision the rugged life of a cowboy out on the fit range. Ever wonder how much coffee is times too much times coffee when riding through the night? Or why it always seems like you're talking to yourself, but in good company? Spoiler alert, it's because cows are terrible conversationalists. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1870 seconds somewhere in Texas, where the air smells like leather and strangely powerful, pungent critters, and your breakfast options include dubious biscuit choices and beans that could withstand a civil war. The prairie stretches out before you, vast and unyielding, painted in every shade of brown you didn't know existed. As the sun dips below the horizon, a coyote's lonesome cry echoes, sounding remarkably like that tune your uncle tried to sing at family reunions, though thankfully, it's slightly less off-key. Your horse lifts its head ever so slightly, adjusted to the rustlings and nighttime serenades that define life under the stars. Tonight's sky looks like it was drawn by a child hopped up on sugar and enthusiasm, stars scattered like too many sprinkles on an overzealous cupcake. The moon? Oh, she's flaunting her glow with all the flair of a Hollywood diva, casting silver beams across the open land as if trying to light up the cowboy's rather questionable decisions. Ah, yes, decisions. Amid the rustling cattle, you ponder how on earth you ended up here, instead of in a quaint coffee shop sipping a latte and judging people's choices like your grazing longhorns, who, by the way, are practicing their synchronized grazing routine nearby. Let's take a moment to discuss your companions. You've got the cattle, bless their hearts, meandering around, giving a performance that screams, "Look, everyone, someone's trying to keep us in line." Each longhorn is as unique as a flea market sculpture, some optimistic, some audibly derisive, and perhaps a few wondering if they really signed up for this life, expressing their thoughts in nothing heavier than grumbles and face-chewing. Against all odds, you find camaraderie in their bewildered expressions. "What have I done to deserve this?" they seem to ask as they nudge each other with knowing looks, just waiting for you to drop the reins so they can skedaddle straight into a lush cornfield. And let's be real, they'd likely haul themselves up onto some picnic table, ready to snack on whatever non-asphalt edible vegetation they can find. Now, imagine it, there you are, wading through a veritable sea of cattle. It's a full-on bovine sea festival, and you, my friend, are the reluctant bouncer at Cattlepalooza. As they shuffle around, you can't help but wonder if they're chattering among themselves. Did you hear about Bessie from down the way? She actually made it to the munching competition and won with her impressive lawnmower impersonation. Meanwhile, you're just holding your ground, questioning whether you're really the herder or the punchline at this ever-unfolding comedy show. And amid all this musings, there it is, silence. One unexpected moment, where even the crickets seem to conspire against you. It's like when everyone in the coffee shop suddenly falls quiet because someone just dropped a muffin, but your cows are stiff, contemplating their next move, as if an invisible light switch has suddenly turned off their collective enthusiasm. Then, out of the quiet, comes the unmistakable echo of a coyote, interlaced with the distant chatter of something you hope is just wind. It might be whispers of neighboring ranchers discussing who has the better brisket recipe, or even the local gossip. Trust me, you will want to know when Old Ned's new hat is about as fashionable as sidewalk chalk. Your horse snorts softly, readjusting under the cool night sky, which is ridiculously accommodating considering how little dramatic content you'd assume it could muster. If only it knew how severely your own social life was lacking compared to its nocturnal adventures. So, you sit there on your saddle, listening to the sounds of nature around you, each sound a reminder that, while you might feel alone in this vast expanse, you're surrounded by the mysteries of the Wild West that are infinitely more ridiculous than your deepest modern-day struggles. And just when you think sleep is creeping in, you remember, this is only the beginning of your cowboy escapade. The warmth of sleep beckons, teasing you with visions of blissful ignorance and future decisions, like whether to try to outrun those cattle during breakfast or just prepare for chaos. But for now, with the lonesome cries of coyotes punctuating your resolve, let your eyelids flutter like a pair of nervous butterflies, welcoming the absurd dreams of another long day spent in the unpredictable embrace of adventure. Trust me, tomorrow might be filled with more surprises than a tumbleweed stuck in a barbed wire fence. So breathe easy, laugh gently, and drift into sweet slumber as you settle in for whatever mild chaos awaits you next on this salty life of the cowboy. Chapter 24. Pondering the Saddle. Cowboy Wisdom and Existential Cattle Conversations. Hey guys, as we tread deeper into the serene chaos of the Wild West, we find ourselves hugging the saddle, pondering our life choices like tired philosophers cloaked in dust and denim. Tonight, we're not just riding into the sunset. We're diving into the pleasantly perplexing world of a cowboy grappling with the weight of the world, one chew of jerky at a time. So, do you think deep thoughts as the sun sets? Or do you just stare into the horizon like a confused dog waiting for a squirrel? Do you ever consider the profound wisdom of self-reliance, or wonder why snacks made of jerky can double as emergency rations in both the saddle and at your desk? Ever feel like the universe is slowly directing you to the nearest taco truck, but instead, you end up herding cattle for 14 hours straight? Congratulations. You've just woken up in the 1,870 seconds, dust-cloaked and, possibly, saddle-sore. You're surrounded by the rugged terrain of Texas, where the air is thick with the smell of leather, hay, and, well, cow. You can practically taste the history mixed with last night's beans. But don't worry. Life on the range has its own rhythm, a beat not too dissimilar from a clock that somehow lost its battery. As the sun cloaks itself in oranges and pinks like it's auditioning for a role in a local production of Nature's Splash Zone, there you sit, perched atop a horse that looks just as weary as you feel. No big city comforts here. Just you, your trusty steed, and a few longhorns who seem more intent on engaging in a staring contest than grazing. Are they judging you? Perhaps. Do they expect you to fix their existential dilemmas? Absolutely not, but here we go anyway. Let's talk about self-reliance. Picture this. It's day 5 of your cattle drive, and you're contemplating the philosophical implications of cattle consciousness while sitting on your horse, which, ironically, might be contemplating the significance of that last patch of grass instead. Like an old-school Facebook feed, your mind starts scrolling through thoughts about how to better yourself, all while your critters are plotting some class action lawsuit for being on the wrong end of a branding iron. How much can one person expect from their horse, you wonder? It's probably like ordering takeout from a menu you can't read. You get what you get, and half the time it just starts to wiggle. Drenched in tiredness, you're mentally crafting proclamations such as, "Every cowboy is a philosopher in their own right." Or, "At least I can ride and complain to my heart's content." But, of course, deep down, you know that true working men aren't about the myths, the glories of shiny horses or tall tales. They're about the quiet competence. They adapt with the changing winds, both in life and on the range, like some Texas version of the ever-flexible yoga instructor. You glance down at the longhorns, who are philosophizing their own way through the muck and chaos. One of them, Bob, yes, you're now on a first-name basis with a cow, seems to be reflecting hard on his life choices. What if there's more to life than grazing? You can almost hear him ponder. What if I really could learn to yodel? Probably not, Bob, but I admire your ambition. As the dust settles around you, the irony of your daily existence hits you like a rogue tumbleweed. Is it absurd to think that life is a series of adaptations, like a cow trying to navigate the complexities of being a walking steak? Perhaps it's even mildly comical, like seeing your buddy trying to do high kicks during the two-step while balancing a saddle, both precariously and widely entertaining. And as night cloaks the landscape, you feel a sense of camaraderie with the nocturnal wildlife. The crickets chirping their soothing symphony as they collaborate on their nightly serenade, a soundtrack to your experiences. Here, amid the livestock and the expansive sky, you start to see the importance of adaptability, just as a tumbleweed rolls through, seeking its next adventure in navigating a fence line. In this world, every cowboy knows that they must face the sudden whipped winds of uncertainty and the reality of having to shove their cowboy boots into yet another pair of uncomfortable chaps. Speaking of discomfort, you briefly wonder whether advancing your existential horse commentary into stand-up pomposity will ever win you a rodeo award. Probably not. But it's a nicer thought than admitting you're just here to round up a bunch of lost calves. The stars begin to twinkle above, a glittery sky laced with unfiltered awe and wisdom, beckoning you closer. You contemplate, as you're about to doze off, whether it's the stars or that lingering question of breakfast in the morning that will control your fate next. Will it be flapjacks, or yet another serving of beans right next to a side of existential dread? Ah, such decisions. So, breathe deep, cowboy, as the night winds whisper sweet lullabies, and let the silence envelop you as you drift closer into dreams, where the only tasks are raising your hat in salute to the universe, and likely missing your cue to wrangle up those coyotes who don't seem to have figured out that midnight snacks aren't meant to be on the guest list. Tomorrow brings a new day, and with it, more tales to tell. But for now, let the comforting blanket of night cradle you into peaceful sleep once more. Chapter 25. Starlit Slumber, the last whispers of a midnight cowboy. Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey smoother than a longhorn's last burrito, settling in beneath a sky littered with gleaming stars like an overzealous artist who couldn't stop tossing confetti. We're diving into the whimsical world of the 1870 seconds, where cowboys were the original night owls. Wait, did they even have owls out there? Regardless, grab your favorite sleep mask, throw a fan on high, and get cozy, because it's about to get more absurd than a cattle drive turned salsa dance-off. But first, let's take a moment for some critical pondering. Ever found yourself in a situation where you're surrounded by a herd of existentially confused cattle and thought, if only I had a degree in bovine psychology? Have you ever experienced that special kind of frustration that could only be described as trying to change a tire on a wagon that refuses to cooperate, much like your uncle during Thanksgiving dinner? And really, why did no one tell you that sleeping under the stars could feel more like a night in a nature-themed improvisational horror movie? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the 1870 seconds, where the air is rich with the essence of hay and the distant scent of campfire smoke dances against your skin, as if it's not entirely convinced of its efficacy. You glance around and see your fellow cowboys catching a few winks beside a fire, their faces illuminated like peculiar charcoal statues, in a weird art installation defying all known definitions of aesthetics. The fire crackles as if it's attempting stand-up comedy, although in this case, most of the punchlines fall flat, bouncing off the leather-clad boots of exhausted men, reminiscing about the hours they just spent in a saddle that feels like it was made from hastily strapped-together cactus. As your eyes begin to flutter, you've got one insightful question. Why exactly is it socially acceptable to smell like a 1-3-month-old block of hard cheese while asleep under an open sky, with only your trusty hat as both a pillow and a fashion statement? It's now the wee hours, and the stars twinkle overhead, as if they're embarking on their own late-night gossip session. Your fellow cowboys murmur tales of wild bull encounters, and you half listen, wondering if anyone could tell the difference between a morning chorus of crickets and the regrettable tune of Boys of the Wild West hummed out of somewhat out-of-tune voices. Honestly, it's a true miracle that all these gentlemen aren't dreaming of line dancing while nursing their blisters. You roll onto your back and watch one cosmic speck of dust manage to distract you from contemplating the purpose of yet another long day. Ever wonder if those stars might feel like they're in a cosmic competition for dimmest light? Maybe out here in the wilds, every celestial body is judging the rest in the great beauty pageant of the universe. I heard Ursa Major was looking a bit rough this season. A tiny yet audacious star might gleefully whisper among itself. The night is far from silent. As you ingest this stargazing philosophy, you notice that around you, the sounds of nature are almost as jumbled as a cowboy's cooking skills. Is that a rustling tumbleweed, or your imagination playing tricks as you sink deeper into the abyss of your cowboy dreams? Well, if it were your imagination, it might also be a degree of hazy nostalgia, perhaps longing for a time when the toughest challenge was trying to figure out what kind of biscuit pairs well with, let's say, absolutely no food at all. The truth is, you're completely zen despite the odd noises. Breathing in the essence of burnt beans and leather, thoughts drift where they may, blending the past with strange visions of tomorrow. You consider the fading era of the cowboy. It's ironic because here you are, lying amid remnants of a life that teetered perilously between rugged freedom and simply trying not to step in something, well, saddle-related. You remind yourself that the pace is different here, much less frenetic than the office buzz of modern life. Out here, too, the cattle don't care about deadlines or emails. They just want to discuss the ramifications of being a walking stake, and you, the cowboy, supply all their deep existential quandaries with a dash of corralled humor that could light up the darkest prairie. As you drift further into that warm embrace of sleep, you realize the essence of a cowboy's endurance. It's about stability in fluctuating winds, awareness of the stars above, and a heartfelt promise never to let your horse's hooves hit an unexpectedly muddy patch in the road. You can't help but chuckle at how absurd it all is, this life of lassos and late-night campfire gossip, of exhaustion that feels both fulfilling and utterly ridiculous at once. And just like that quilt made of mismatched patches of fabric, this life weaves together the triumphs and trials, the unearthed laughable moments of glory. You may find yourself drifting off while contemplating your own version of a midnight snack, maybe a slice of cake you'll never have again. With the stars still twinkling, laughter hanging in the air like uninvited guests, and the warm earth cradling you into slumber, embrace the absurd, cowboy. Tomorrow, the cattle will be just as indifferent to your musings, and you'll rise again, trading the peaceful lull of this night for yet another chaotic, glorious day on the range. Sweet dreams await, as do bewildered longhorns and cheese-scented chaps. Sleep tight. And now, as we drift away from the dust, sweat, and long, rattling hours of a cowboy's day, let your breath soften, slow, and settle. Tonight, we walk beside men who woke up aching on cold ground, rode under a sun that felt almost personal in its anger, and laughed anyway, because sometimes laughter is the only thing that keeps a weary spirit moving forward. We felt the sting of grit in the air, the burn of tired muscles, and the humor tucked between every mishap, from stubborn longhorns with minds of their own to breakfasts that tasted more like survival challenges than meals. We followed cowboys through heat waves, stampedes, rattlesnakes, and coffee so strong it probably qualified as a controlled substance. Yet, somehow, through all the discomfort and chaos, there was resilience, that quiet, stubborn kind of endurance that only grows in hard places. Those men lived through long days that would break most of us by noondays shaped by courage, by grit, by a sense of duty, and yes, by sheer comedy. And now, as you settle deeper into your sheets, take a moment to feel grateful for your soft pillow, your warm room, your clean water, and your modern comforts. No dust storms, no saddle sores, no cows plotting mutiny in the dark. Let the weight of the day fall gently away. Let your muscles loosen, your breath deepen, your mind grow quiet. You've done enough. You've earned your rest. And unlike those cowboys, you won't be waking up to a cranky horse or a questionable pot of campfire coffee. So close your eyes, feel the calm settle over you like a warm blanket, and drift softly, peacefully, into sleep. The trail is quiet now. You can rest. Good night, cowboy.